Hey, what's up everyone, it's Synq, bringing you all a remastered solo raids guide. The solo raids meta has changed a lot, and I've decided it's finally time to make a new guide. This will be a pretty long video, but I'll do my best to keep it short and simple. Timestamps will be linked in the description of the video for different rooms and methods. I'll try to separate which methods are easier and others that are more advanced. If you have any questions, please comment down below. You can also try contacting me on Twitter, Discord, or while I'm streaming on Twitch. This video has taken me literally over 1,000 hours to create, so a like on the video, subscribing, or following me on Twitch would be greatly appreciated. Welcome to the Remastered Solo Raids Guide. For solo raids, I recommend base 90 combat stats and at least 70 prayer. This will give you access to Piety, Deadeye, and Mystic Vigor. 77 prayer is also great for Rigor and Augury if you want to take it a step further. These raids scale to your combat level, which increases points and difficulty. The optimal level to get a decent amount of points is combat level 115. You can talk to Captain Rimmer outside to remove the scaling completely. This increases the amount of points and difficulty, and the raid will now be scaled to a level 126. Whether you choose to remove the scaling is entirely up to you. By default, you were given a private chest that can hold up to 25 items. I strongly recommend 30 construction for beginners to build the lowest level chest. An experienced player can do solos with just the private chest, but I still recommend level 30 for beginners. The minimum herbal requirement I recommend is level 78. With 78, you can make the strongest potions, excluding the overloads. The best overloads can be made at level 90, but you don't actually need level 90. Certain combat rooms can drop overloads, so you can skip this requirement entirely. I still recommend level 90 as a learner, but you can still get by just fine without it. The Muttadiles, Tekton, Vasa, Vespula, and the Vanguards all drop overloads. Level 55 farming is the absolute lowest level I recommend. This allows you to farm every type of seed. However, a higher farming level increases the amount of herbs you get. A higher thieving level can speed up the thieving room substantially, but you can always do this room even at level 1. The guardians can only be damaged by pickaxes. Although you can technically do this room at level 1, I strongly recommend not doing that. You start dealing more damage with a higher leveled pickaxe. A higher mining level also increases your max hits. I strongly recommend at least level 61 for the dragon pickaxe. A higher woodcutting level helps with cutting the Muttadiles meat tree, as well as getting kindling from the ice demon. Again, these rooms can still be completed even at level 1. This is a general setup for solo raids. It's completely up to you on what to upgrade or downgrade. The Blood Fury is always a great substitute for either the Torture or the Rancor. This setup brings Astral, Lava, Water, and Death runes for both Humidify and Vengeance. If you only have a regular rune pouch, then bring runes for just Humidify. Humidify can be used to douse the flame wall and fill water vials while prepping. When you become more experienced, you'll learn to always dodge the flame wall manually. Then you can either bin the rune pouch completely or start bringing thralls. You can also use a watering can to douse the flame wall 8 times. The only disadvantage is that it takes up an inventory space. You can also use the Grickler's can for more charges, but you'll have to get that from Tithe Farm. The Ruby Dragon Bolts and Dragon Runner Crossbow are specifically used for the Olm's head phase. The Staminas are mainly used for the Great Olm, but make sure you're using them during the raid if you need to. The Sand Fuse are used to negate poison from Vespula and Shamans. The Lance will be your main melee weapon here. You'll need a stab weapon for Vasa, as well as a crush weapon for Tekton. The Lance is perfect for this because you can use both styles. You can downgrade if you need to, but you really need the right attack styles for those combat rooms. For stab, I recommend the Hasta, Voidwaker, or the Rapier. For crush, I recommend the Hasta, Mace, or the Elder Maul. This is a slightly upgraded setup with the Bofa. The Bofa doesn't require any ammo and gets better with more crystal armor. The rune pouch contains fire, blood, death, and aether runes for both thralls and death charge. If you only have a regular rune pouch, then bring runes for just thralls. You can also swap the fire runes for smoke runes. With smoke runes, you can also cast Vile Vigor. With Vile Vigor, you can restore your run energy at the cost of prayer points. In tight situations, this can be really helpful. This setup has Oathplate in the Eye of Ayak. Once you have Oathplate, make sure to use the Lance on Slash for the Great Olm. This is the absolute max setup. If you want to bring a Blood Fury instead, that's still completely fine. The Surge Potion restores your special attack by 25% every 5 minutes. This is incredibly helpful throughout the entire raid. Here are some RuneScape plugins I strongly recommend having before you start doing solo raids. Every section from now on will assume you have these plugins downloaded. The Instance Map plugin shows you what's in the raid by right-clicking the world map, choosing Instance Map, and using your scroll wheel. The Chambers of Xeric plugin displays the raid layout. These next few plugins must be downloaded from the plugin hub. Make sure to get the Crabstun Timers, Raid Reloader, and the CoX editions from BootJuice. I also recommend getting this plugin that shows up after typing DO with a 0. That's DE0. When you enter a raid, you are randomly generating a dungeon. This can be done over and over to generate a dungeon specifically for you. You can right-click the stairs to do this. Sometimes you'll find raids where you have a couple rooms that you want to do, but the rest remains unknown. The Raid Reloader can be used to scout even more potential raids. Make sure the plugin is turned on, and a new tab should appear along the sidebar of RuneLite. When you open the instance map, it only loads part of the raid with you as the center. You can change where the center is by going as far away from the start as possible. When you reload the client, a new center is found, loading even more of the raid. Some raids have weird layouts, so this doesn't always work. There are 4 different room types. They are separated into either scavengers, farming, combats, or puzzles. Some layouts don't have any overloads, some have a lot of supplies, and some are more difficult than others. It's up to you to decide what layout you want to do. All the puzzles are pretty easy, so we'll be discussing which combat rooms you want to do. The easiest combat rooms in my opinion are the Muttadiles, Shamans, Skeletal Mystics, and Guardians. Each combat room drops something of use, but I'll only be covering what's important. The Shamans, Mystics, and Guardians all drop seeds for farming. The Muttadiles drop 2 overloads, 2 prayer enhances, 1 brew, and 1 restore. Tekton drops 2 overloads, 1 prayer enhance, and 1 restore. Vasa drops 1 overload and 2 brews. Vespula drops 1 overload, 1 prayer enhance, 2 brews, and 1 restore. The Vanguards drop anywhere from 1 to 3 overloads, 1 prayer enhance, 4 brews, and 2 restores. You'll notice that Vanguards drop the most supplies, but they're also arguably the hardest room. I still think they're absolutely worth learning if you're trying to do no prep solo raids, but it's fine to skip on them as well. Generally, you should always be scouting shorter and faster raids because this is the best points per hour. You also don't want to be taking too long to scout a raid because that also cuts into how much you're actually raiding. 5 room raids are usually the best. These are either 4 combats and 1 puzzle, or 3 combats and 2 puzzles. In terms of efficiency, the Tightrope and Crab rooms are the best puzzles. Before you start your raid, you'll have access to a bank chest. You can get whatever items that you need. However, this is only before you start your raid. Once you've started your raid, the bank chest will close and become inaccessible. Once you found the raid you want to do, you need to decide on what items to bring. For Tekton, you should bring a crush weapon or the Scythe. For Vasa, you should bring a stab weapon or the Scythe. For Vespula, it's recommended to bring an extra 1 to 2 restores to use the redemption method, as well as some form of anti-poison. The Sanfu serum will act as both. For the Muttadiles, you can bring a ZGS, but it's not absolutely needed. For Guardians, you'll need to bring the absolute best pickaxe you can use. For Skeletal Mystics, I strongly recommend bringing the Salve EI for extra damage. For Shamans, you'll need to bring some form of anti-poison. For Thieving, a lockpick can help speed up the room. For Ice Demon, any Demon Bane weapon or fire spell will be very useful. In this example, I have Guardians, Vasa, Tekton, and Vespula as my combat rooms. I don't really need anything special for Tightrope and Crabs. For Guardians, I'll need a pickaxe, and I already have the weapons I need for Vasa and Tekton. For this raid specifically, I don't need the extra restores for Vespula because I'll be getting a prayer enhance and restore from Tekton. If you get a private chest early in the raid, you can bank items you don't need until the end of the raid. For example, in this raid I don't need any mage gear other than the staff for Crabs. I can bank a single stamina because I don't need both, and I can bank the Bastion because Tekton will give me an overload anyway. I can also bank the Emberlight because I can just grab it once I reach Ice Demon. This is really helpful for picking up any extra supplies you get during the raid. Scavengers are low-level mobs found between rooms. Here you can get planks, lockpicks, mushrooms, juice, and Sicily. In some scavenger rooms, a shortcut will appear. Doing these shortcuts will award players some points and quick access to the other side of the room. They're worth doing if you have the required level and equipment to do them. However, it is never worth using your special attack to get the required level. You should always drink a strength boosting potion before pushing the boulder. The points you get are scaled off of your strength level. At the end of every floor, there's a bank chest, energy pool, and a patch of weeds. You can rake the weeds for seeds if you didn't happen to get any. Energy pools are scattered throughout the raid. These are found in all farming rooms and scavenger rooms as well. These will recharge your run energy back to 100. You can take off some armor before depositing your inventory. When you withdraw everything back, your inventory stays the same. Multiple of the same potion in the bank can affect this, so this doesn't always work. Regardless, it helps keep your inventory manageable. To make water vials, you'll need to get gourd vials from the tree in the farming room. You can fill these up with humidify or by using the nearby geyser. There are 3 different types of seeds: the Buchu, Golpar, and Noxifer seeds. These can be planted in the farming room using the nearby tools. You can also clear the patches early if you need to. To make a restore, you'll need a Buchu leaf and mushroom. To make a brew, you'll need a Buchu leaf and juice. To make a prayer enhance, you'll need a Buchu leaf and Sicily. To make an anti-poison, you'll need a Noxifer and Sicily. To make an overload, you need the 3 base potions for it. If you don't have 90 herb lore, I wouldn't recommend doing this. To make an elder potion, you'll need Golpar and a mushroom. To make a Kodai, you'll need Golpar and juice. To make a twisted, you'll need Golpar and Sicily. Use a Noxifer on any of these potions to make an overload. The Elder, Twisted, and Kodai potion are all stronger variants of the Super Combat, Ranging potion, and the Imbued Heart. The Overload is a mix of all 3 of these potions. At the cost of 50 HP, the Overload will give you the effect of all 3 base potions. Every 15 seconds, the Overload will reboost your stats. To take advantage of this, brew before the 15-second interval happens. You're able to heal without losing any DPS. During this interval, you can brew as much as you need to. However, you need to be fully restored before that 15-second timer is up. The Overload lasts for 5 minutes and will grant you 50 HP at the end of it. The Prayer Enhance is always paired with the Overload. It increases your prayer points by 1 every 6 game ticks. In short, it basically prolongs your prayer points. Using the Chambers of Xeric Additions plugin, I strongly recommend putting this setting to the regen cycle. This tells you the exact tick your prayer regens and is very helpful during Vespula. The Prayer Enhance lasts for 4 minutes and 50 seconds. These 2 potions are commonly used in a pair, so their timers end around the same time. Sometimes you can't afford to wait for the 15-second interval. To maintain your DPS, you can brew and drink a boost potion right after. This pretty much has the same effect without losing any DPS. The Visual Metronome plugin can be used to count any amount of ticks. This can be especially helpful with advanced methods later on. You can have it above your head or somewhere on your screen. Once you've learned to always dodge the flame wall, I strongly recommend bringing thralls. Build the habit of always using the Mage Thrall, as it'll affect most things within the raid. During Vasa, the Mage Thrall works on both Vasa and the crystals. During Vanguards, the Mage Thrall works on all of them. During Vespula, it's pointless to summon a Thrall because it can't reach the portal. During Tekton, you'll want to use the Melee Thrall. The Great Olm is affected by all 3 Thralls, so make sure to use them accordingly. Basically, just summon them depending on whatever attack style you're using. This is the Ice Demon. You need to thaw it out by lighting the braziers with kindling that you get from woodcutting. When you enter the room, make sure you have 3 empty inventory slots. Drop potions if you need to, and you can get them back later. Pick up the tinderbox and bronze axe and immediately start chopping the closest tree. Without losing ticks, start making your way to the trees closest to the Ice Demon. Make sure your last chop is on the tree closest, so you start thawing out the Ice Demon as soon as possible. The absolute minimum amount of kindling you should be doing is 2 braziers of 24. The kindling can stack up to 28, so I usually just chop the full 28. Light the 2 braziers with no ice fiends on them, starting with the one closest to you. I usually chop a few more logs to light a 3rd brazier so it thaws out even faster. Around 10 extra kindling should be enough. Now's the time to run back and grab any items that you may have dropped, or grab anything that you need from the chest. Always protect from range. This will force the Ice Demon to only attack with ranged projectiles. If you don't, it can use ice spells that will freeze you in place. The ranged attack has a 3x3 radius. This can easily be dodged by moving 2 tiles away. The Ice Demon is very weak to Demon Bane weaponry. With these, you can stay on the Arceus spellbook. The Emberlight is a great option. You can choose the Emberlight spec to also lower its defense, but this is only worth it if you don't need a spec soon. The Burning Claws are good, but only for their potential damage. You can pair it with a Surge Potion and spec 4 times. This is fast, but isn't always consistent. This is the Purging Staff method. Make sure you're using some form of Demon Bane spell. This is the Scorching Bow method. Fire spells are very strong against the Ice Demon. The only downside is not being able to be on the Arceus spellbook. This is the 4-tick Fire Surge method with a Tome of Fire. This is the 5-tick Fire Spell method without the harm. This works with any fire spell. If you are blowpiping 1 or 2 tiles away, the range attack is pretty fast. Attack and run every 2 ticks to dodge. If you are slightly further away, the range attack lands later. The method for blowpiping is slightly different. You alternate between 2 attacks, then 1 attack repeating. This is the method for the Bofa. This is a relaxed method for the Twisted Bow. This method lowers the travel distance. The closer you are, the sooner it dies. You can also use the Shadow, but there are so many better options. This is the Thieving room. To complete this room, you need to open the chest for some grubs and feed it to the scavenger. The lockpick isn't absolutely needed, but it significantly reduces the time it takes to open the chests, making this room a lot faster. You'll need a total of 30 grubs and a solo raid to exit the room. When you enter the room, immediately start thieving from the chests. This is so you can start getting grubs while on the way to feed the scavenger at the other side of the room. Make sure you have at least 1 inventory slot available for this, as the grubs can stack up to 28. Drop a potion if you need to. Once you have around 8 to 10 grubs, I recommend feeding the scavenger so it starts eating while you're still getting more grubs. I recommend getting around 8 grubs every time before dumping. The number shown here in the info box is the total amount of grubs you've gotten. If you feed the grubs and wait too long to feed the scavenger again, its HP can regenerate and you'll need to get more than 30 grubs. This normally isn't an issue, as you'd have to wait a pretty long time for it to start doing that. To avoid this, just feed the scavenger before the regen timer even starts. When you try opening a chest, you get anywhere between 1 to 3 grubs. This scales based on your thieving level, and at level 95, you are guaranteed a minimum of 2. At level 100 thieving, you can even max out at 4. Using the Thieving Cape, you can boost your thieving to level 100 for a short amount of time. You can do this by either just equipping the cape, or by right-clicking it in your equipment tab. The Summer Squirk Juice can also boost your thieving level by 3. This means you can have 97 thieving instead of 99 and still have the same effect. The Summer Skirt Juice is annoying to get, and it's only obtainable from the Sorceress Garden minigame. These 2 items are usually only used in challenge mode team raids. There are 4 special chests that change randomly per raid. There's an algorithm to it, so the Thieving plugin was created specifically for this. Once you start thieving from highlighted chests, the plugin starts deleting potential chests. This narrows it down until there are only 4 highlighted chests left. One of these chests contains bats that heal you for 23 HP and give you points if you have HP to be healed. If you try eating one at full, you won't get any points. You'll also receive some points for just finding the bats. The other 3 are poison and will deal 1 damage when opening it. These will stay static for the rest of the raid. Efficiency-wise, it isn't really worth looking for the bats, but if you don't really care and want the extra points and food, then that's also fine. These are the crystal crabs. Plugins such as the crab stun timers and the crab solver are strongly recommended. To complete this room, you need to bounce the light that comes out of the wall into the crystals with the corresponding color. The black crystal corresponds with white, the yellow crystal corresponds with blue, the cyan blue crystal corresponds with red, and the magenta purple crystal corresponds with green. To bounce the light, you have to bounce it off of the crystal crabs around the room. The light will always bounce clockwise. To change the color of the light, you need to change the color of the crab that the light is bouncing off of. There is no tick delay when attacking between each crab. The light defaults to white, so for this color you don't need to do anything specific. To change the color to blue, you'll need to mage the crab. As long as your magic bonus is higher than -64, you won't splash on it. To change the color to green, you'll need to range the crab. To change the color to red, you'll need to melee the crab. Smashing the crab in place will also change the color to red. To smash the crab in place, you should be using the Dragon Warhammer or the Elder Maul. If you don't have either, there's a hammer spawn in this room. You need to equip whatever weapon you're using to smash the crab. Standing 2 tiles away from a crab will immediately aggro them. Make sure the crab continues hitting you, otherwise it'll de-aggro if you're outside of the range for too long. If you accidentally color the light the wrong color, you can destroy the light earlier by changing the color of the next crab it bounces off of. If you accidentally miss the bounce, you can also destroy it earlier by running into it. The lower HP you are, the less damage it will deal. However, this can kill you at 1 HP. The crab stun timer plugin is very helpful. It tells you the exact amount of ticks it'll take for the crab to unfreeze. Once the timer reaches 0, a new timer will appear. Basically, the crabs can randomly unfreeze during this question mark time frame. It can unfreeze right at the very start, or even at the very end. Dealing with multiple crabs can be very annoying, but your pathing mechanics can help make this a lot easier. Running back and forth through a crab can help you stack them on a single tile, so one crab doesn't end up bragging you. You can color both crabs if you're not sure which one the light is bouncing off of, or just smash one there. Running to the right tiles can also help with putting the crab into the right place. If you want to move out of the way of the light, you can move diagonally around the crab to keep it in its place. If you're trying to lure multiple crabs at the same time, I recommend either constantly tagging each crab to keep them aggroed, or staying next to multiple and walking on the way. There are 3 different layouts of the crystal crabs. Each room has a different layout of crystals. This means that there are multiple ways of solving this room. Each room is known as a different name. In all layouts, the crystal crabs will always spawn on the west side of the room. Because of this, some layouts have different solves because of where the crabs originally spawn at. I'll be showing some of the fastest ways to solve each of these rooms, but there are multiple different ways. You can solve each room in any way or order that you want. This layout is known as good crabs. This is because this layout can be anywhere between 10 to 25 seconds faster than bad crabs. This layout is known as bad crabs. This is because this layout has the slowest solve strategy out of all 3 layouts. This room is still faster in comparison to other rooms, just slower than the other crab layouts. This layout is known as rare crabs. This is because this layout is, well, rare to find. It can only be found in very specific scouts, so you'll hardly ever see this layout. This is Tightrope. You need to get the keystone on the other side and use it on the barrier to get through. Before doing this, you'll want to defeat the mages and rangers that guard the keystone. Use the twisted bow on the mages and the shadow on the rangers. If you don't have either, you'll be using your best ranged weapon instead. These mobs attack at a speed of 4 ticks, which is faster than the twisted bow and the shadow. You can change the speed of how they attack by using an obstacle or by taking advantage of their attack range. By doing this, you can make it a 1-to-1 ratio. If you're blowpiping the rangers, you can manipulate when they attack and what armor you're wearing to take less damage. The first method is the easiest. Just put on your tankiest plate body, such as the BCP, and attack the rangers. They have very low defense, so you'll hardly lose any DPS anyway, while also increasing your defense drastically. This next method is flicking on your tank gear every other hit. This ensures that you have full accuracy and damage every other hit, while also having higher defense for when the rangers actually attack you. The best method for this abuses an obstacle nearby to maximize your DPS while also increasing your defense. This also works while using the gate. If you brought both a blowpipe and a twisted bow, you can do this method to get 2 hits in while only taking 1 in return. Here's what this looks like with the Bofa. Here's what this looks like with the Shadow. In some raids, players like to bring in purple sweets, specifically for challenge mode. If you did bring these in, you can tiki to minimize the amount of food you use in this room. This isn't recommended because you're wasting a lot of money, losing DPS, and a lot more time. This next trick is treated as a last resort method. This is only if you absolutely have no supplies left, and you can prep for supplies right after. I don't recommend this at all because it's a huge waste of time if you have the supplies to do this room normally. To do this method, attack any mob and run out of its render distance. Once it disappears, it completely de-aggroes. You can go back and forth attacking it without taking any damage at all. This can be helpful if you accidentally attack 2 at the same time. You can step on these skulls here to have the same effect. Once you've defeated both the mages and rangers, you can now cross the tightrope and get the keystone. Then, use the keystone on the barrier. The tightrope skip is the fastest way to complete this room and isn't really that hard to pull off. You can practice this yourself by scouting a raid with tightrope first. Make sure you are over 23 HP and wearing the tankiest gear you have with the Phoenix necklace equipped. The rangers deal the most damage, so you'll be praying range while wearing Missouri for the magic defense. You should also be using augury because it also has magic defense. Cross the tightrope and spam click the floor in front of the keystone and then immediately the keystone to grab it. Without missing any ticks, grab the keystone and click on the tile in front of the rope. While you are in the middle of running to the rope, click on your Phoenix necklace and then click on the rope immediately. On your way off the rope, you can spam click your brew on the way to the barrier. You know you've done this correctly if your Phoenix necklace breaks when you get off of the rope. Regardless of doing this correctly, there's still a small chance of dying that's completely out of your control. The way you have your camera angled is very important. Having the rope next to where your Phoenix necklace is drastically increases your chances of success. The Kirby Skip is another method, but it's specifically only for challenge mode. I'll be linking it in the description for anyone that wants to learn. These are the Guardians. You'll need the highest level pickaxe you can use. The Dragon, Crystal, and 3rd Age pickaxe all have the same DPS. If you forgot your pickaxe, you can use the Iron pickaxe on the floor. I strongly advise against this as it is significantly weaker. You want to use your pickaxe on the Smash attack style. This is because the Guardians are weak to Crush. Your DPS increases with your mining level. Make sure you're using Piety as well. This damage caps at level 99. Protecting melee does help, but usually the Guardians hardly ever hit you anyway. To attack the Guardians, stand 3 tiles away to avoid any debris and unnecessary damage. Attack any Guardian and step 3 tiles away right after. Then, just rinse and repeat until you've completed the room. To save some run energy, you can step 1 tile closer after you've stepped 3 tiles back. Once you've defeated one of the Guardians, you can use this one-click method instead. This method saves run energy and also makes it easier to flick your prayers while doing it. If you want to speed up this room by a few ticks, use the Range Thrall on the last Guardian. The Range Thrall can cause overkill damage and speed up the death animation. This isn't necessary and only useful if you really want to go fast. These are the Skeletal Mystics. The Salve Amulet EI is strongly recommended. This shadow is best in slot for Skeletal Mystics during your solo raids. The Bofa and Blowpipe are also commonly used here. The Twisted Bow isn't as strong here because their magic level isn't as high as the other bosses. It's still an acceptable weapon to use, but the Bofa and Blowpipe are usually better options depending on gear. Make sure you're protecting from magic while doing this room. Most, if not all, NPCs in RuneScape are based off of their southwest tile. You can safe spot the Mystics by trapping them on an obstacle. They'll get trapped on objects either east or west of them. To safe spot a Mystic, make sure there are no obstacles between you. Doing this will force it into eventually trying to melee you. Do this for all of the Mystics in the room. When you're luring the Mystics, it's important to keep damaging them. Losing DPS while luring them isn't worth it. If you need inventory space to equip anything, drop an item at the start of the room. Sometimes you can isolate the first Mystic without having to aggro the others. Once they're all trying to melee you, trap the Mystic on an object either east or west of them. Once they're safe spotted, you can start attacking them. Stand diagonal of the Mystic so you don't take any melee damage. I recommend making sure the tiles adjacent to you do not have an obstacle on it when safe spotting them. Sometimes they'll start maging you again. This is normal as they randomly decide to switch attack styles. They'll eventually switch back and try meleeing you again, which means you are avoiding a lot more damage by doing this. You can also use a second Mystic as a safe spot because the first Mystic thinks that they have line of sight without an object actually being there. Sometimes a Mystic will spawn bugged and inside of an obstacle. You can stand under it to force it to move out of place. This can push it towards the other side or free it from being stuck. There are some god spots that you can use in every layout. You can tell by the set of rocks diagonal from the purple objects. With these god spots, they can be safe spotted on either side. Once you've completed the room, some portals will spawn. You can use these portals to travel to either the start or the end of the room. You're also free to grab the item you may have dropped. These are the Shamans. You'll need some form of anti-poison for this room. Make sure to use the Protect from Range prayer. The best DPS for this room is completely dependent on your gear. You'll have to figure out what's the best DPS for yourself. For regular solo raids, the Shadow, Bofa, and the Blowpipe are most commonly used. The Twisted Bow is usually only better for challenge mode, but you can use it here if you want to. The Shamans have a few different attacks. The Acid Splat is an AoE that spans in a 5x5 radius. You can dodge this by running 3 tiles away from where it lands. They can also melee you, so make sure you are always at least 1 tile away from them. Using the Protect from Range prayer will give you full protection against its ranged attack. Shamans will sometimes summon purple spawns. They have an AoE that spans in a 5x5 radius. Make sure you are far enough away to not take any damage. They only really do small chip damage, so if you need to take a few hits to keep up with DPS, then that's completely fine. Shamans can jump and slam onto where your character was. This is registered the very moment the shaman jumps. The slam is an AoE that spans a 3x3 radius. To avoid this, run at least 2 tiles away from where you were when it jumped. If you only move 2 tiles, you'll still be in melee distance. Make sure to keep moving to stay away from it. The general method of this room is to hug along the walls. This prevents the shamans from jumping and making you lose DPS. Standing on tiles like these while using a corner of the wall can also prevent the shamans from jumping. To visually demonstrate this, I've marked some extra tiles here. If you are standing on the blue tile, the shamans can jump and slam here. This is because the shamans span a 3x3 radius and can now land here. In this example, the blue tile is along the wall. The shamans can no longer jump there because they can't fit there. Here's another example of using a corner tile. That bottom right tile alone prevents the shamans from jumping at all. You can also safe spot the shamans by trapping it behind an obstacle. You can force it to jump, but usually this is ill-advised because you're losing DPS. If you don't really care about speed, then go for it. Shamans have an attack range of 8. The rapid attack range of the Dragon Hunter crossbow is 7. This means you'll always be attacked unless you switch to long range. The attack range will then be increased to 9. If you keep your run on, there's a chance you'll get dragged into the shaman's attack range. This is because you end up skipping over a potential tile. To avoid this, turn off your run energy. This brings you to the furthest possible tile you can attack the shamans from. The rapid attack range of the Bofa and Twisted Bow is 10. This means that you don't need to switch to long range, and you also don't need to turn off your run. If you're using the Shadow, you do need to switch to long range. Understanding how the attacks work is very important. The Acid Splat and the Jump Slam are registered on the tick that the attack animation happened. This is basically the very moment the Shaman moves at all to do the attack animation. If an Acid Splat were to happen, the area where it lands is determined right when that happens. If the Shaman were to jump, the tile where it slams is also determined when that happens. You can move freely near the edge of the room as long as you are standing next to the edge on the tick and attack is registered. The safest and easiest method of doing this room is using a longer ranged weapon. You basically just want to hug the walls while attacking each shaman. It's a pretty simple method, but make sure you're avoiding all of the acid splats and the purple spawns when you can. It's always ideal to isolate fighting one shaman at a time. This way you don't have to worry about dodging multiple acid splats or more purple spawns. Blowpiping shamans is a bit more difficult to do than the other methods. Depending on the distance the shaman is away from you, the acid splat's travel time changes. When you are blowpiping, you always want to make sure you are moving on one tick and then firing on the next tick. Doing this over and over will ensure that you never get hit by an acid splat if doing it correctly. Remember that moving at least 3 tiles is how you dodge the acid splat. So when you're choosing to move, you can either do 2 movements of 2 tiles, 2 movements of 1 tile, then 2 tiles, or 2 movements of 2 tiles, then 1 tile. To properly do this, you need to make sure that you move on the same tick the shaman attacks. This is to ensure that you are moving the moment the acid splat determines where it'll land. Pay very close attention to when I move and fire my blowpipe. No matter how far the shaman is away from you, as long as you are doing this method properly, the acid splats will never hit you. You do, however, need to be at least 1 tile away from the shaman at all times. You don't need a straight wall to do this method either. Here's what it looks like doing this on an awkward corner. I am still dodging the acid splats perfectly because I am at least 1 tile away from it when it fires an attack. Here's what it looks like if you mess up. If you are even on the Shaman's corner tile when an attack is registered, it can fire an instant acid splat. If a Shaman just jumped, you can instantly set this method up. Spam click the Shaman and immediately move after your first attack. Then continue the method as normal. So why is it important to do this method correctly? If you try doing this method flipped and attack the Shaman on the same tick it attacks you, you can get hit by an acid splat. In this example here, I show you the max distance you can reach the Shaman with a Blowpipe. At first, you might not see a problem with this. Each acid splat is being dodged because the travel distance is increased by how far the Shaman is away from you. Now let's do this exact same method, but with the Shaman one tile away from you. It becomes impossible to dodge the acid splats. This is why the previous Blowpipe method is much better. If you can recognize that you've messed up, you can just delay a single hit by one tick in order to get back into the correct cycle. Here's an example. Ideally, you want to isolate a single Shaman. If you have a long-range weapon, you can use it to lure the Shaman at the start of the room. Then, switch to your Blowpipe and continue the method. You can also do this to lure the Shaman closer to a wall. If you're using the Atlatl, I strongly recommend using Accurate and doing this method. It's much easier than the Blowpipe, and you have a pretty big window to dodge the acid. In my opinion, using the Atlatl on Rapid is much more difficult. If you care a lot about DPS, then do this instead. These are the Muttadiles. You'll need any form of disposable axe or the Zamorak God Sword. If you didn't bring an axe, you can get one from the floor. The fight begins with a smaller Muttadile roaming the room with the bigger Molgoatkirby hiding in the water. The Molgoatkirby will occasionally attack you with magic while the smaller one chips you down. The small Muttadile does not have a high magic level, so you shouldn't use the twisted bow on it. It has very low defense, so it's recommended to use a Blowpipe. The Bofa and any powered staff are most commonly used here as well. The Synq staff is also a great choice because you can passively heal with it. You can use the Scythe or any melee weapon, but it's usually less DPS. Before you start the fight, make sure that you have high defense gear on. Because the smaller Muttadile has practically zero defense, your accuracy doesn't matter as much. For example, for those using a powered staff, I recommend equipping most of your damage boosting gear, but keeping your tank gear on. This way you still have really high damage without sacrificing much defense. This would go the same way if you chose to range instead. The goal of this fight is to defeat the Muttadiles while preventing them from eating the meat tree. Once the Muttadiles are 50% HP, they'll prioritize eating the meat tree in order to heal. Ideally, you want to damage the Muttadiles up to around 55% HP while the meat tree is still active. You'll need to chop the meat tree down completely to prevent them from eating. Once you begin the fight, you'll usually want to prioritize protecting from range. Sometimes the smaller Muttadile will roam far away from the entrance. Because it's so far away, you're free to chop the tree without needing to tank. The cost of this is losing a bit of DPS because you can't attack it while chopping the tree. Make sure to switch to protect from magic because the bigger Molgoatkirby can still reach you. Once the smaller one can reach you, you'll want to prioritize protecting from range again. Sometimes the smaller Muttadile won't be able to see you if it's on the other side of the tree. No matter what weapon you're using, make sure you're also attacking the Muttadile while chopping the tree. This is because you don't lose any DPS while chopping the tree as long as you are doing it properly. With the Blowpipe, you can do 2 hits between each chop. For every other weapon, you'll want to do 1 hit between each chop instead. A common misconception is that you stop woodcutting when you're getting attacked. This isn't the case. Your character continues chopping the tree even if the animation is cancelled. This is because the animation of getting hit takes priority over your woodcutting animation. Here's an example of blowpiping during the meat tree and serves as a great base for understanding this part of the fight. Once the smaller Muttadile is close enough, you now want to prioritize protecting from melee. This is because the smaller Muttadile will prioritize meleeing you over ranging you. Protecting from melee gives 100% protection, whereas protecting from range only gives partial protection. Sometimes the Muttadiles have very sporadic movements and can actually start moving away from you as well. If that happens, just protect from range instead. You'll want to do 2 hits right after each woodcutting tick. Start off by waiting for a woodcutting XP drop. Once this happens, continue to do 2 hits, then woodcut, then rinse and repeat. A common issue that players have with lower woodcutting is not always getting an XP drop after the second blowpipe hit. This is completely fine because your character still attempted to cut the meat tree. This is essentially on the woodcutting tick. Even if you didn't get the XP drop, you want to continue the method as if you did. Here's some examples of other methods while chopping the tree. Once you've chopped the meat tree down completely, you can kill the smaller Muttadile. Depending on your supplies and gear, you might want to equip things like Missouri back on for the extra damage. The difference isn't going to be insane, so if you're low on food, keep the tank gear on. As I stated before, sometimes the Muttadile will sporadically roam and walk away from you. To prevent this from happening, constantly kite under the Muttadile so you're always within melee distance. This is because you always want to get hit by melee as you have 100% protection against it. Here's some other examples with different weapons. Once you've defeated the smaller Muttadile, the bigger Muttadile will start coming out of the water. The Muttadile has a really high magic level, so you should use the Twisted Bow here. Because of its higher magic level and higher magic defense, you shouldn't use any powered staff. Make sure to prioritize protecting from range and use your best ranged weapon. This Muttadile's attack pattern is somewhat predictable. She will only switch attack styles once either range or magic is used at least 3 times. To simplify this, you'll want to start off by praying range. Once she attacks with range 3 times, there's now a chance for it to switch to magic. Once it attacks with magic, this is when you need to start praying mage. You only want to pray magic for the second and third magic attack. Once the third magic attack happens, you'll want to switch back to protecting from range. This is because the Muttadile's range attack is much more dangerous. It is much better to risk getting hit by a magic attack off prayer rather than a ranged attack off prayer. If this is all too complicated for you, just pray range the entire time. Make sure to always keep your distance. The Muttadile has a dangerous slam attack that can hit through protect from melee. To counter this, it's recommended you learn how to always safe spot it under any circumstances. The Muttadiles have 3 different room layouts. In this specific room layout, this spot here will always be a safe spot. You can quickly recognize this by looking for the set of rocks here by the entrance. The Muttadile's tile radius is too large to get close enough to melee me. Specifically, this tile here is the one that blocks her off. In every other layout, the Muttadile is commonly safe spotted by the water. Remember, NPCs are based off of their southwest tile. This is important as it isn't always possible to safe spot it by the water. For example, in this clip you can see that the Muttadile is safe spotted. This is because the NPC is trying to align its southwest tile with me. The rest of its tiles, however, are trapped by the water. Remember, the Muttadile can still roam sporadically. If you're really unlucky, the Muttadile might just randomly go around the safe spot and melee you. Here's another example of the same safe spot, but with a southwest tile slightly different. As you can see, the safe spot still works due to where the southwest tile is. Here's another example of the same safe spot, but the southwest tile isn't oriented in the way that you can safe spot it. The NPC is attempting to align its southwest tile with me, and therefore its entire radius can go around the corner. If this ever happens, try your best to protect from melee and run away. Luckily, I was able to avoid any unnecessary damage while also safe spotting it. If you're unable to safe spot it by the water, here are some other examples to safe spot it depending on its southwest tile. Here's another example by one of the entrances. Here's another example of it not working. Alternatively, you can also use the Zamorak Godsword spec. This freezes them for about 20 seconds and prevents them from eating the meat tree. The moment you get an XP drop that will put the Muttadiles under 50% HP, you need to do a full-on melee switch and use your special attack. It's possible for the ZGS spec to fail, and you will not freeze the Muttadiles, so this is more of a risky play. The ZGS spec is completely reliant on if you had a successful hit or not, which is why putting on your melee gear is very important. More specifically, accuracy boosting melee gear. If you do fail the spec or you don't do enough damage, they'll end up going to the tree and continue eating it. Eventually they'll stop eating the tree, but in doing so you've wasted a lot of time and supplies. You only want to do this method if you don't need a spec soon after this room or if you're speedrunning. If you fail the special attack on the small Muttadile, make sure to save your second spec for the big one. Make sure when you spec, there's enough distance between the Muttadile and the meat tree. Otherwise you'll end up speccing for no reason and the Muttadile will continue eating the tree anyway. Depending on the Muttadile's southwest tile, you might be able to get it stuck on some rubble. This prevents the Muttadile from eating the meat tree. This is more luck based and not really reliable. The Muttadile's damage can be unforgiving, so here are some tips to save yourself some supplies. If you're taking heavy damage when chopping the meat tree, you might get confused on when and how to eat your brews. Just drink a single sip of your brew or restore right after you see an XP drop. Your character will stop cutting the tree, so make sure you re-click the tree as well. If you're skilled enough, you can camp the Protect from Magic Prayer and flick on Protect from Melee or Ranged on the same tick that the small Muttadile attacks you on. This protects you from the magic attacks while also providing protection from the smaller Muttadile. This can be a bit more difficult, but worth it for more advanced players. When ranging the bigger Muttadile, you can flick on some melee gear in order to tank some attacks. If you're not overloaded, you can kill the small Muttadile and immediately pick up the potions to overload for the bigger one. This is more of a speedrun strat and can be scarier for new solo raiders. If you're cutting it close and happen to have purple sweets, you can tick eat every attack. This is very low DPS and is only recommended if you can resupply right after. The Muttadile's attack damage is registered on the tick that the attack animation started. So if the attack animation started and I am at 2 HP, it'll likely decide on that specific tick that it'll hit a 2. As long as you eat right after the attack animation, you've successfully tick ate the attack. This next tip only works in challenge mode or if you have the same room orientation and layout. If you miss your specs on the big Muttadile, you can stand here. This works as a pseudo god spot for whatever reason. This is Vasa Mysterio. You'll need your best stab and ranged weapon. The Twisted Bow and Rapier are some of the best options for this. Here are some of the most commonly used weapons. The Bofa is better than the Blowpipe, but the Blowpipe is still a very good option. If you don't have any of these weapons, use your best ranged weapon. The Inquisitor's Mace is a crush weapon that can be used for Tekton and also has a stab option. It basically has multi-purpose. The Mace has the same strength bonus as the Rapier. Because Vasa's crystals have negative stab defense, there's very little difference when using it on stab. The Voidwaker also has a stab option, with the added benefit of having a special attack. The Scythe paired with Oathplate is incredibly accurate, so this is also a great option. If you're worried about inventory space, just bringing the lance is completely acceptable. Before you begin the fight, make sure you're already in your ranged gear. Drop a potion if you need inventory space because the fight doesn't start until you walk towards the center of the room. Once you're ready, walk towards the center of the room to awaken Vasa. The fight starts with Vasa teleporting you and doing an explosion attack. The teleport will stun you in place, turn off all of your prayers, and prevent you from turning them back on. The explosion will damage you depending on the HP you had when you were teleported. The moment the teleport animation ends is when the damage is calculated. So at this specific point right here is when it's calculated. The explosion will damage you for your HP at this exact moment -5. So if you were at 99 HP, the explosion will hit you for 94 damage. If you were already previously low HP from another room, it's actually advised not to eat up before doing Vasa. This is because your HP is still calculated to end up at 5 HP anyway, and you'd end up wasting supplies for no reason. Because the explosion damage is calculated on this specific tick, you can eat up as much as you want right after that. As you can see in this clip, I am teleported while having 99 HP. This means the explosion has calculated to hit me for 94 right at this moment. I'm free to brew up, restore, and range pot during this time frame in order to prepare for the fight. Even though I am now at 115 HP, the explosion will still only damage me for 94. Make sure to spam click Vasa for the first attack and dodge the boulders the moment your character unfreezes. After this point, you're finally able to activate your prayers again. Be careful not to activate them too early as they might just stay off. Your prayers will only stay off if you attempt to turn them on while you are still stunned and frozen. Vasa attacks with a 3x3 AoE ranged attack. Protect from range to lower any damage you might take. You can avoid this attack completely by moving 2 or more tiles away. You can recognize the sound of when the boulder is being fired, and this might help you out with the timing of your movements. Vasa can trample over you and hit up to 8 damage per tick. It's best to try to avoid standing under it. After the explosion attack, Vasa will randomly go to any of the 4 crystals. You can recognize which crystal it is by seeing which one starts glowing. Whichever crystal it chooses, it will follow a set path. There will always be an opening for you to attack the crystal on the other side. Once on the crystal, Vasa will become invulnerable. Numbers will then appear on Vasa. These numbers show how much Vasa will heal if you don't destroy the crystal in time. You are then forced to attack the crystal with melee to prevent Vasa from healing at all. Once you've defeated the crystal, Vasa will default to going back to the center. It'll then randomly choose another crystal to go to. However, it cannot go to the same crystal twice, so it will choose one of the remaining 3. Once Vasa has spent too much time on the crystals, it'll then go back to the center. When this happens, Vasa will do another teleporting explosion attack. After the explosion, Vasa will once again choose a random crystal. However, now that it finished a full cycle and teleported, it can actually go back to the same crystal it was just at. Think of this as Vasa resetting. I highlighted a blue tile to help you recognize this. Vasa will repeatedly follow this cycle until it's defeated. Here's an example clip of how to blowpipe Vasa. It's as simple as running 2 tiles after every single blowpipe hit so you never get hit by a boulder. If Vasa is moving away from you, your character will automatically run 2 tiles closer. It basically dodges the boulders for you. While you're blowpiping, make sure you're moving towards where the crystal is so you can immediately start attacking it once Vasa becomes invulnerable. For those of you that have a Blowpipe crossbow combo, you can use the crossbow to last hit Vasa before it touches the crystal. This is a small but noticeable change to your DPS that is absolutely worth doing. Here's an example of using the Atlatl. Because Vasa attacks every 3 ticks, dodging with the Atlatl is very easy. Here's an example clip of using the Bofa. This isn't much different than blowpiping, except you don't need to stop and fire as often. Here's an example clip of using the Twisted Bow. Make sure to spam click Vasa after the explosion attack to get the most amount of hits before it reaches the crystal. If doing this properly, you should be able to get 4 hits in before the first crystal. With the Twisted Bow's range, you're able to be far enough away from Vasa that you can't get hit by the boulders, while also being able to attack it. Now for some extra information to fully grasp how this room works. Because Vasa can do multiple explosion attacks within the same fight, it's usually recommended to try and stay low HP. What's the point in using supplies just for it to all be deleted for 5 HP? The only reason you'd want to use supplies is if you plan on venging the extra explosions. Obviously, don't be such low HP that you're risking it, but don't eat up so high either. Vasa's boulder attack has a 3x3 radius. If it lands awkwardly on a corner, running around this corner can also result in you getting hit. To avoid this, manually run 2 tiles each time around the corner. When you've defeated a crystal and Vasa starts going back to the center, the best way to path yourself is to where Vasa just was. This is because Vasa can't go to the same crystal twice before its next explosion attack. If Vasa is almost dead, you should change your last hit to an accurate attack. This is only worth it if you have an actual chance of killing it with the final hit. If you're a bit slower on switching gear, you should try and at least do half a switch to not miss any ticks. Every attack is important, and even if you have half of your gear on, you still have that chance of dealing really good damage. The Voidwaker's special attack can deal some serious damage. This is only recommended if you don't have a room ran after that requires a spec, such as Tekton or the Great Olm. You never want to do your first hit with the Voidwaker because you won't have piety on for it. You also don't want to use the spec when Vasa is nearing a crystal, because then you're too far away to hit the crystal in time. Make sure when you're using your special attack, Vasa is toward the middle of the room. This can be difficult to pull off, but try not to lose any ticks while doing this. The Dragon and Burning Claws can also be used on the crystals for their extremely accurate special attack. This is an easier alternative. If you brought the claws but don't have a stab weapon for whatever reason, they also have a stab option. When speccing with claws, they will always roll off of your opponent's slash defense. Switching styles when speccing with your claws won't matter, so just make sure you're stabbing with them when you're not speccing. If you're able to, having Venge ready for this room can be really helpful. Choosing between Venge or Thralls is completely up to you. However, main accounts are able to use thralls while also having another account cast vengeance for them. This can only be done before the start of your raid. You'd also need to be able to get to Vasa without breaking it. If Vasa is your first room, then you don't really have to worry about that. However, for example, if you have Shamans and then Vasa, you're able to complete Shamans without ever having to break your venge. When starting the room, I don't recommend being as high HP as possible. This is because once you get teleported, you won't be able to drink any brews. You are forced to drink a brew right after the attack happens in order to heal. This can be scary because you might just immediately die. If you feel like you're skilled enough, however, then be my guest. Make sure you are already fully potted before the fight starts. This is because when you brew, you'll want to immediately repot before your second ranged attack. You'll also want to re-super combat as well. Here's another example of being max HP for the Venge, however, Vasa ends up trampling me. This was a pretty close call, which is why I usually advise against it. The Phoenix Necklace can be used when venging. When starting the room, make sure you have your Phoenix Necklace equipped and your HP is as high as possible. This is because instead of brewing, your Phoenix Necklace will heal you instead. Make sure you are already potted. Once Vasa has teleported you, spam click Vasa as normal. Once the attack lands on you, your Phoenix Necklace will break and automatically heal you. Equip your ranged necklace and run away from Vasa right after. Then continue Vasa as normal. Vasa will stay on the crystals for a total time of 67 ticks. This does not count the time it takes for it to reach each crystal. For example, if Vasa spends 24 ticks on one crystal, 24 ticks on a second crystal, it will then only spend 19 ticks on the third crystal before doing the explosion attack. Why is this important? If we assume you were using a 4-tick weapon like the rapier, this means you have a maximum time of 16 hits on the crystals for a grand total of 64 ticks. This means that once you've hit the crystals a total of 16 times, Vasa will default to using the teleporting explosion attack. If you are doing your methods perfectly while also keeping track of your hits, you can always stay on top of when Vasa will do its special. You can also underestimate and assume 14 to 15 hits. Sometimes you lose a tick here and there and think you killed the crystal in time. In this clip, I defeated the crystal on the same tick that Vasa was ready to get off and do the explosion attack. Unfortunately, it didn't count and Vasa still healed. Just pay attention to if Vasa heals or not and you'll know when it's happening. This method shown here allows you to dodge the explosion attack and damage Vasa earlier. This specific way of doing it is unique to challenge mode. Once the Guardians are defeated, stand on the Vasa skip tile. Look in your chat box and wait for the Guardian's complete message with the time. The moment you see that message appear, click to go to Vasa without losing any ticks. Run towards the marked tiles to awaken Vasa, and run back to the marked tiles to pass the flames. Now you can attack Vasa much earlier than intended. The moment you finish Guardians, the room time can sometimes almost instantly appear. This means you need to immediately start the Vasa skip with almost no warning. It's still possible to do, just annoying when it does happen. This is Tekton. The Dragon Warhammer and Elder Maul are strongly recommended. Tekton's defense is incredibly high, and the special attacks can be used to lower it. The Bando's Godsword can be used as a substitute, but it is significantly worse. This is because you are guaranteed to always land your first Maul or Dragon Warhammer spec on Tekton. If you miss your special attack after landing the first one, Tekton's defense will still be lowered by 5%. If you miss your spec with the BGS, Tekton's defense will only be lowered by 10 levels. This mechanic only works on Tekton. The most common weapons to use here are the Mace, Elder Maul, Colossal Blade, Scythe, Fang, Bludgeon, and the Dragon Hunter Lance on Crush. There's a few different methods when doing Tekton, and each method is specifically based on how fast your weapon is. Some are much easier than others, however, it's strongly recommended to stick to the method that you have the most DPS with. When doing these methods perfectly, you can take 0 damage from this room. However, for learners, I recommend using Protect from melee until you're comfortable. For those that brought Venge, make sure to tank the hit off prayer to deal the most amount of damage. If you're afraid of this, it's acceptable to Venge on prayer as well. For those that brought Thralls, make sure you're using the melee Thrall. The visual Metronome plugin can be really helpful for learning each method. Make sure to change the tick counter of the plugin to match whatever weapon you're using. Tekton has trample damage if you stand under it. It's best to try to avoid this. There's 4 smoke vents at each corner of the room that'll lightly damage you. Avoid standing in them for too long. Each smoke vent has a 2x2 radius. Some methods require you to attack Tekton while running counterclockwise. For whatever reason, doing so ensures that you never get hit by Tekton. Going clockwise runs the risk of randomly getting hit, and you should never be doing this for the most part. Tekton actively checks if a player is next to it. If a player is not next to it, Tekton will retreat back to the anvil earlier than it was supposed to. This also includes corner tiles. You don't want to be on these tiles when Tekton is checking for a player. When doing each method properly, Tekton will always go back to the anvil after a set amount of time. This doesn't necessarily mean that you messed up, so try not to get this confused. The goal is to deal as much damage as possible before Tekton returns back to the anvil. Tekton will regain HP while on the anvil, but will not regain any defense levels. Make sure you're standing on any of these tiles marked here around Tekton when it's checking for a player. When you run in this game, your character is teleporting 2 tiles at a time. This goes for corners as well. Your character simply teleports directly around the corner. Make sure when you're doing some of these methods, you run specifically when you've reached the green tile to get around the corner. Tekton remains inactive at the start of the fight on the anvil. Standing on the 4th tile away from Tekton in any direction will lure it off the anvil. Tekton is based off of its southwest tile. Because of this, the way that Tekton is lured is completely dependent on room orientation. The different methods when doing Tekton is also dependent on this. To simplify this, I'll be calling this a left Tekton because its southwest tile is on the left. If the southwest tile is on the right, we'll refer to this as a right Tekton. Using the Better NPC Highlight plugin, you can manually mark Tekton's southwest true tile. It's strongly advised to lure Tekton as far away from the anvil as possible. This is so you get the most amount of hits on Tekton before it returns to the anvil. Tekton has 2 separate forms, its base form and its enraged form. When Tekton is in its orange base form, its defense is at its lowest. This is the form you want to prioritize speccing on. When Tekton is in its red enraged form, its defense is at its highest. This is the form you don't want to spec on. It will also have increased offensive bonuses, so you may want to prioritize venging the red form over the orange form. Tekton will always start the fight in its orange base form. This is known as Phase 1. Once Tekton retreats to the anvil, he will start regenerating small amounts of HP. While Tekton is on the anvil, flying meteors will start to land where your character is currently standing. We'll call this the mid phase. Each meteor is an AoE with a 3x3 radius. To dodge them, run 2 tiles away in any direction. A good way to time this is by clicking the next tile the moment the meteors land. If you want to end at a specific tile, I recommend staying 2 tiles away from it at all times. Once Tekton has been on the anvil long enough, he will return in its red enraged form. We'll refer to this as every other phase. This is because every phase after the first phase will remain the same. Tekton will now always return in its red enraged form over and over until defeated. When first speccing for Tekton, you should be attacking it 3 tiles away from you. If done properly, your character should attack and move 1 tile forward, and Tekton is now set for the method. This saves you 1 tick, which can potentially land you an extra hit total. I strongly recommend marking Tekton with True Tile, either using the NPC Indicators plugin or the Better NPC Highlight plugin. You should also mark the Southwest True Tile while you're at it. To time this correctly, I like to click on Tekton the moment its true tile reaches these tile markers. As you can see here, there are 4 different tile markers. The 2 tile markers on the left are the ones used for a left Tekton, and the 2 tile markers on the right are used for a right Tekton. For access to the tile markers for each layout of Tekton, it should be in the description of the video. When practicing, it is strongly advised to practice while doing challenge mode. This is because when starting a challenge mode, Tekton will always be the very first room in the raid. This basically means unlimited practice. The first method is what I like to call the monkey method. This method is most commonly done with a 4-tick weapon and is the easiest one to do. Copy the starting strat as shown, and then run around Tekton while attacking it on the 4th tile right before the corner. This would essentially be the green tile shown here. The reason it's called the monkey method is because it's the laziest method that also uses a lot of run energy. I personally don't recommend this method because you're wasting unnecessary stamina potions. If you don't really care about using the extra stam doses, then sticking to this method is fine. If you accidentally off-tick yourself doing other methods, you can use the monkey method to fix it until you're on tick again. I've set the visual metronome to a 4-tick counter here. As you can see, when I attack with the mace, it is on tick 3. As long as I continue attacking on tick 3, I know I'm doing this method properly. Here's how to start phase 1 while tanking a Venge hit. Here's how to start and continue this method on every other phase. I attacked on tick 3, which means I should be continuing to attack on tick 3. To move the camera around, I personally move my fingers to the arrow keys on my keyboard. This way I can constantly move my camera around while also being able to click accurately on Tekton. The next method is the normal 4-tick method. This method saves run energy by walking around Tekton. You'll be clicking individual tiles to make your way to the tile right before the corner. You'd still want to run around the corner, but otherwise you're walking for the most part. I'm attacking with the mace on tick 1 as part of a 4-tick cycle. As long as I continue to attack on tick 1 while going around Tekton, I'm doing this method properly. To start this method, recognize if it is a left or right Tekton. In this case, this is a right Tekton. Lure Tekton as far as you can, then start the strat as shown here with any specs. Here, I am continuing to attack on tick 4. Here's how to do a right Tekton Venge start. Here's how to do a right Tekton start for every other phase. Left Tektons are a bit awkward to lure, but the method stays the same after the start. Here's how to start the 4-tick method on a left Tekton for phase 1. Just run to the initial start right after your first hit, then continue as normal. Here's the start of the 4-tick method with Venge on a left Tekton for phase 1. Here's how to start the 4-tick method on a left Tekton for every other phase. The next method is the 5-tick method. This is commonly done with the Scythe or the Fang. The Scythe is pretty inaccurate considering it's a slash weapon. You basically need a Dragon Warhammer or Elder Maul spec. The only time you want to use the Scythe on Crush is if you're using Inquisitor. Otherwise, make sure you're using the aggressive option. I highly recommend clicking individual tiles and counting each tick between each attack. This method becomes much easier once you understand how it works. Each attack you do is followed by 4 ticks before attacking again on the 5th tick. Here's how to start a 5-tick right Tekton for every other phase and continuing the method. In this clip, I attack on the 5th tick. As long as I continue to click on individual tiles, keeping in cycle becomes very easy. After every 3rd Scythe hit in the cycle, the pathing slightly changes. To do this, step away from Tekton on the 3rd tick and stall on the 4th tick before attacking on the 5th tick. This is attack 1, attack 2, attack 3. Here's how to start a 5-tick left Tekton and continue the method. In this clip, I demonstrate how it's possible to step away from Tekton right before it starts going to the anvil to squeeze in an extra hit. Here's how to start a 5-tick left Tekton for every other phase and continue the method. In this clip, I don't demonstrate stepping away to squeeze in an extra hit. I'll be overlaying each attack so you can visually see the total amount of hits. In this clip, I'll be demonstrating how to squeeze in an extra hit. In the previous clip, the total amount of hits was 12. However, you can see how to actually get a total of 13 hits. The next method is the 6-tick flinch method. This is also commonly referred to as the step back method. This method is commonly done with the Elder Maul or God Sword. The Elder Maul is significantly better than the God Sword, but some of you have no other choice. You can even do this method with the Dragon Warhammer. For this method, it doesn't matter if it's a left Tekton or a right Tekton. You'll be able to do this from whatever tile you choose. Here's how you start the step back method. Here's how to do it for every other phase. As I stated before, Tekton actively checks if a player is on any of the tiles next to him, not including the corner tiles. The 6-tick method takes advantage of this and only steps next to Tekton on the exact ticks that Tekton checks for a player. Tekton checks for a player every 3 ticks. Doing this flinching method means you'll be forcefully standing next to it every 3 ticks on that specific tick. This is 1 tick before his attack happens. For example, in these clips, I'm always standing next to Tekton on tick 1 and tick 4. During your raids, it might be on tick 2 and tick 5, but the concept stays the same. Whenever your spec regenerates, the best time to spec is when Tekton changes from its red form to its orange form. Here's an example of how to do this while doing the 4-tick method. If Tekton is low enough HP, you should get closer to it when it gets off of the anvil. This is to reduce the time it takes for Tekton to travel to you and finish off the kill. This is Vespula. Your main goal is to destroy the Abyssal Portal. The portal is guarded by Vespula, and you'll have to deal with her while attacking the portal. The Shadow is the best weapon to use on the portal. The Twisted Bow, Bofa, Synq Staff, and your best crossbow are commonly used. The Redemption method is used to complete this room. You'll need at least a few restores on hand or a single prayer enhance. For beginners, it's highly recommended to have some form of anti-poison. Once you become more experienced with Vespula, you won't need one anymore. Before starting this room, I highly recommend using preset tile markers. There are 3 different layouts, and you'll need to be standing on 3 different very specific tiles or the method won't even work. The tile markers should be in the description below. I also recommend going to the Chambers of Xeric Additions plugin and activating the Detailed Prayer Enhance plugin. Setting this to the regen cycle will tell you exactly when you'll regain a prayer point. This should end up in your normal info boxes. I personally prefer having the specific info box right next to my quick prayers. If you want to do this, you can hold shift to detach that specific info box and then hold alt to drag it around your screen. At the start of the fight, Vespula will immediately attempt to tag the grubs in the room. This will cause the HP of the grubs to slowly deplete. Once the HP of the grubs reaches 0, a Vespuline soldier will spawn. Once the soldiers are alive, the Abyssal Portal will start to heal. If this happens to you, I recommend just leaving the raid. The alternative is a hassle, and this shouldn't really happen in the first place. When you begin the fight, your goal is to immediately attack the portal. This will cause Vespula to become enraged. Once enraged, she'll fly in front of the portal and constantly attack any player under her. This also means that she'll stop attempting to tag any of the grubs. If you're lucky enough, depending on the tick cycle you entered in the room, Vespula might not be able to tag any of the grubs. This means you'll have as much time as you need to attack the portal. However, Vespula will almost always tag at least one grub. If you have decent gear and average luck, you should always be able to defeat the Abyssal Portal before the Vespine soldiers spawn. This isn't always the case, and maybe you have terrible luck. If that's the case, there are Metavamia routes on the opposite side of the room. If you get around 3 to 4 per grub that was tagged, you should be able to feed them to full HP. This will prevent them from hatching as long as Vespula doesn't tag them again. If you do manage to spawn the soldiers and for whatever reason want to complete the room, you'll have to kill them all. First, kill them with range, forcing them to land on the ground. After some time, they'll end up exploding. You can also just melee them. Then get some Metavamia roots to feed the grubs or try killing the portal again. Vespula will stay enraged for approximately 24 ticks. I don't expect you to remember this, but this is important because you need to know when to stop attacking the portal to get any roots. If you just randomly go and get the roots right when Vespula stops being enraged, she'll just end up tagging more grubs. You can tell when Vespula becomes enraged again by looking at her animations. When you see Vespula stall her animation, this means that she was re-enraged. This is the exact window you need to run for the roots if you need to. The only time Vespula is able to poison the player is when it is directly auto-attacking you. This should never really happen at all, since she only does this when she isn't enraged, and she's already tagged all 4 grubs in the room. If you are confident that this never really happens to you, a form of anti-poison isn't needed. Make sure your quick prayers are set to redemption and either augury or rigor depending on your weapon of choice. As I said before, you need to stand on very specific tiles for this method to work. These tiles are placed right outside of Vespula's attack range and prevent you from constantly taking damage. When doing this method properly, Vespula will only damage you up to 8. This means that you'll freely be able to redemption every single time as long as you are properly using the right tiles. However, if you accidentally use a different tile, Vespula can damage you for much higher. This almost always means certain death, so pay very close attention to where you're standing. The basics of this method is simply attacking the portal and clicking back on the safe tile while having your quick prayers activated. Redemption will always save you as long as you're doing it right. You'll need to drink either a prayer enhance or a restore to continue doing this method once your prayer gets depleted. The prayer enhance works because you gain 1 prayer point every time you drink it. If you are solely using a prayer enhance and don't have or wish to use any restores, you'll be losing a small amount of DPS. This is fine for learners, but more advanced players will never want to miss any ticks. Using the prayer enhance info box, you can see exactly when your prayer will be restored. If you are on the safe tile, the correct time to attack the portal is when the timer reaches 1 tick. Your character will start moving on the next tick when your prayer is regenerated, and you can activate your quick prayers just in time to attack the portal. The method seems simple, but there are a couple issues you might run into. If you have one prayer, sometimes your prayer might run out before Vespula even procs your redemption. A great way to avoid this is constantly turning off either Augury or Rigor right after your attack is registered. Another issue you might run into is your prayer staying on after redemption procs. This might sound confusing, but sometimes your prayer remains active even after it happens. This can vary from instantly turning off or staying active for a few ticks. This tends to mess up players who don't want to lose any DPS. This can also happen if you drink a restore too fast after your redemption. In this clip, I purposefully drink the restore too fast and my quick prayers remain active the entire time. If you're not paying attention, normally you'd only click once on your quick prayers to turn them back on. However, doing this would only turn them off. To avoid this, double click your quick prayers if you realize your prayer is still active. This can be very difficult to recognize, so you really have to pay attention to the glow around the quick prayer. Another way to avoid this is by forcefully turning off your quick prayers after your redemption would normally proc. Doing so will prevent this glitch from ever happening. A more advanced way of doing this method is making sure you are never missing any ticks. If your prayer enhance tick timer isn't ready, you'll want to drink either a restore or a prayer enhance to continue attacking the portal. The twisted bow is the exact same method as the shadow, so there's not much to go over. Just make sure you're using rigor. The Bofa is similar to both of the previous methods. The only difference is that it's recommended to use the accurate attack style. This is because a 5-tick cycle is much easier to keep up with than a 4-tick cycle. And if you're doing a 5-tick cycle anyways, you may as well change your attack style for the extra accuracy. For more experienced players, using the rapid attack style for a 4-tick cycle is technically the best DPS for the Bofa. The only real issue with this is constantly keeping up with your prayer dropping. This becomes incredibly more difficult when the prayer enhance is your only source of prayer rejuvenation. If you find yourself missing a lot of ticks doing this method, then it's likely much better to just stick to the accurate attack style. Using the Synq staff is just as difficult as the last method. This is again because it is dependent on a 4-tick cycle. There's not much to say about the crossbow as opposed to other methods. Just make sure you're using the long range attack style if you need to, because sometimes you can't reach the portal without it. For those that don't care about speed, there's an extra points method for this room. As far as I'm aware, this is technically efficient points per hour, but isn't necessary. If you have the shadow, then I'm not sure that it's worth it. The intended way of doing Vespula is to attack her until its HP drops below 20%. Doing so causes Vespula to drop to the floor. This is how players were initially intended to attack the portal without Vespula being enraged. This is important because you actually gain points for attacking Vespula until the first down. When using the Bofa, attack the portal with accurate to enrage Vespula. Then attack Vespula for exactly 5 hits. If Vespula hasn't reached around 20% HP yet, switch to accurate and attack the portal again to re-enrage her. Continue this until Vespula eventually drops to the floor. Your goal is to only farm points for 1 down. Once Vespula drops to the floor, you'll want to do 2 hits on rapid and 2 hits on accurate for the most DPS. While she's on the floor, keep in mind that she can auto-attack you. This can be prevented if you stand under her while attacking the portal. This is important because this is how she can actually poison you. After this, she'll start flying again and become enraged. Then, just do the rest of the kills normal. If you want to do this method but don't want to risk getting poisoned, you can prevent her from dropping to the floor. Start doing this method as usual, but pay very close attention to Vespula's HP. If hits 1 to 4 on Vespula brought her low enough to less than 20% HP, cancel the 5th hit. You'd use the 5th hit to re-enrage Vespula, preventing her from dropping to the floor and risking getting poisoned. For those of you using a Blowpipe, the concept stays the same. However, instead of doing 5 hits on Vespula, you'll be doing 8 hits instead. Once Vespula drops to the floor, make sure you attack the portal 4 times. If you want to prevent yourself from being potentially poisoned, follow the same concept. If your first 7 Blowpipe hits were enough to bring Vespula to less than 20% HP, continue to attack the portal instead to prevent her from dropping. These are the Vanguards. This is commonly known as one of the more difficult rooms. However, I highly recommend doing this room because of the amount of supplies you get from it. The spawn point of each Vanguard is completely random. To complete this room, it's highly recommended to use all 3 attack styles. Each Vanguard is weak to a different attack style. This is the Mage Vanguard. It's weak to range attacks and has a relatively high magic level. This is the Melee Vanguard. It's weak to magic attacks and can be safe spotted a few different ways. This is the Range Vanguard. It's weak to melee attacks and is the only Vanguard that will not move if you stand under it. Defeating the Vanguards is different from other rooms. You need to attack each Vanguard while also keeping each Vanguard's HP within 40% of each other. If you do too much damage to one Vanguard, each Vanguard will reset to full HP. There are indicators that warn you when a Vanguard is in danger of being reset. If you're doing too much damage to one Vanguard, a white tornado will appear, indicating that you should probably attack a different Vanguard. If you aren't doing enough damage to a Vanguard, a darker tornado will appear, indicating that you should do more damage to this specific Vanguard. There's a rune-like plugin that's very helpful for this room. If you had previously downloaded the DO plugins from the plugin hub, there should be a new plugin called Chambers of Xeric Vanguards. These are my personal settings. This plugin shows you the amount of damage that you can deal before the Vanguards reset, and can also highlight them as different colors. Keep in mind that this is only for solos. If you are doing team raids, the plugin will overlay the percentage of health instead. After some time, the Vanguards will travel to a random corner of the room. Depending on what Vanguard you need to damage, you need to follow that Vanguard the moment they start retreating. Vanguards have trample damage when retreating, so how you follow them is very important. Here's an example of the wrong way to follow a Vanguard. Here's an example of following a Vanguard too late. Because of this, the Mage Vanguard was able to aggro on me. Here's an example of properly following a Vanguard. The moment it retreats, you need to be ready to determine where the Vanguard is going. I strongly recommend going around the perimeter of the room if possible to not accidentally aggro the other Vanguards. However, you still want to make sure you are ready to attack the Vanguard the second you can. You also want to make sure you're moving out of the way so you don't take any trample damage. The ranged Vanguard is the only Vanguard that won't move if you stand under it. You can use this to your advantage depending on the weapon that you're using. Vanguards attack every 4 ticks. If you're using a 5-tick weapon like the Scythe or Fang, you can mitigate extra damage by stepping under it. The way you step under it is important. If you attack the Vanguard and immediately step back under it without waiting, there's a chance you'll get hit by 2 separate projectiles. Alternatively, if you attack the Vanguard and wait 1 tick before stepping back under, this completely prevents this from happening. As long as you wait anywhere between 1 to 3 ticks before its next attack, you'll be mitigating extra damage. You can also just face tank the hits if you want. You can attack other Vanguards without having to worry about tanking the ranged Vanguard. Sometimes you've dealt enough damage to this Vanguard early on, and this mechanic becomes very helpful. You don't want to start attacking the other Vanguards at random. If you're attacking the melee Vanguard, it's recommended to switch to the long range attack style. There's a chance you'll get dragged down to the open where everything can attack you. The best way to do this is by going to the closest tile to attack the melee Vanguard while also being the furthest tile away from the Mage Vanguard. This is to prevent accidentally aggroing the Mage Vanguard. If you're attacking the Mage Vanguard, the same logic applies. You always want to prevent accidentally aggroing the other Vanguard. In some layouts, you can safe spot the melee Vanguard on the edge of an obstacle. There are way too many examples of this, but I'll be showing a couple. Keep in mind, this is entirely dependent on the orientation of the room as well. NPCs are based off of their southwest tile, so a safe spot may work in one raid, but not in another raid. In this example, the room is oriented north, making the safe spot possible. In this example, the room is oriented south, making the safe spot not possible. Depending on where the melee Vanguard originally spawns at the start of the room, there are certain areas where it can't reach you. With this setting ticked on, you can see this much easier. Be careful when doing this method, as sometimes the melee will start kiting away from you. This can drag you out into the open. If you die or leave the melee Vanguard's render distance, it'll bug and reset the spawn point of the plugin. This means the plugin will be incorrect, so be careful. The Mage Vanguard arguably does the most damage. If you're using the Twisted Bow, a 5-tick weapon, you can step under it 1 tick before it attacks to make the Major also attack every 5 ticks. Remember, the Mage Vanguard can move if you step under it. As long as you only do it for 1 tick and immediately attack it again, the Mage Vanguard will stay in place. However, if you manage to stand under for more than 1 tick, it'll start to move. Be very careful doing this, as you might accidentally aggro the other Vanguards. Mitigating your own damage is very important when doing this room. 1 fatal hit can reset the entire room. This means that although the Holy Trinity are best in slot, they can be very dangerous. There's a few different ways to keep your damage in check. The easiest way is by switching gear so your max hit isn't as high. For example, the Occult and Imbued Magic Cape increase my max hit by a ton. By switching it to the Fury and Infernal Cape, I can keep some accuracy while also lowering my max hit. This is very apparent with the Twisted Bow and Shadow. An alternative is to switch to a weaker weapon once a Vanguard is in danger of being reset. Switching prayers to weaker versions can be very helpful. Changing Piety to these 3 prayers is something you might do very often. You can even just use these 2 prayers for the defense and extra accuracy without increasing your max hit. The rest of this section are just 2 examples of doing Vanguards. Feel free to move on to the next section if this isn't something that you'll need. The Great Olm is the most difficult challenge when soloing a raid. I'll be dividing each method into their own sections, and also specifying which methods are more beginner-friendly and others that are more advanced. Before even attempting this, I highly recommend activating the Chambers of Xeric Additions plugin. These are my own personal settings. This plugin is very important because it shows you which side the Olm is coming out of instantly. It also shows you what phase the Olm is rising with, as there are 3 different phases. My settings show a red tile indicating where it is and also that it's flame phase. There's also an info box at the top left that reminds me what phase it is. This plugin also overlays the HP of each hand, and this can be very helpful for the final phase. If you turn on the Olm phase highlight option, the Great Olm will always be highlighted the color of the current phase. I personally don't like this as I think it's distracting, but that's up to you. As stated earlier in the guide, the visual Metronome plugin can be extremely helpful for learning solo Olm. It is very likely that you'll be learning 4-tick methods, so make sure to manually change the visual to a 4-tick cycle. There are different tile markers for different methods. Paste spins for the tile markers should be in the description of the video. I strongly recommend using the basic Olm tile markers as a beginner. Some of you might not like hearing this, but you're probably not going to complete your first solo raid deathless. Because of this, I strongly recommend using a few raids as throwaway raids to learn each method. What I mean by this is you should be prepping a lot of supplies in order to practice solo Olm over and over. During phase 3, you have to kill both hands at the same time in order to reach the head phase. If you avoid doing this, both hands will heal to full HP. You can use this to your advantage and practice solo Olm over and over. This means you don't have to do an entire extra raid to practice again. I strongly recommend doing this because most people that try to learn solos will try and brute force their way through Olm. At this point, you're not really focused on learning the methods, you're more focused on staying alive and defeating Olm. Brute forcing through Olm will only go so far, and you'll end up taking much more time to learn. What's more valuable? Learning solo Olm by brute forcing over 15 to 30 raids, or by using a few throwaway raids to learn each method properly? Once you feel like you've learned a decent amount and you're ready to give it a real attempt, I recommend suiciding an inventory of supplies. It's best to do this before you start so you don't lose as many points if you end up dying in the middle of the fight. This will also help with supply management, and eventually you won't need to do this once you become more comfortable. When you enter the room, the Great Olm will spawn on either the east side or the west side. This is completely random for every raid. The Great Olm can't see the entire room. Standing outside of where it can see you prevents you from being attacked. However, it will turn its head towards you depending on where you are in the room. For reference, let's start with the Olm on the east side of the room. When the Great Olm is facing the center, it can only see and attack players within the marked region. Standing outside of this area will cause its head to turn, facing you. When the Great Olm is facing the left, it can only see and attack players within this region. Standing in this region will cause it to face the center. Standing in this region will cause it to face towards the right. When the Great Olm is facing the right, it can only see and attack players within this region. Standing in this region will cause it to face the center. Standing in this region will cause it to face towards the left. Here's what the regions look like when it's on the west side of the room. On your throwaway raid, I strongly recommend practicing how the head turns when you're running around the room. Each method is extremely dependent on manipulating how the head turns. Learning this early on will greatly speed up how fast you learn each method. First, I recommend running back and forth between the far basic tile markers. Running one tick too early or too late can cause you to take damage. The head can only turn every 4 ticks. It is very important that you remember this. In this clip, for example, the head turns specifically on tick 1. This means that no matter what happens, the head will only turn on tick 1. Be careful, as the number can vary depending on when you enter Olm or when it switches sides. So for example, in your raid, the head might turn on tick 3 and will stay that way for that specific phase. To properly run the head, you need to move on the same tick that the head also turns on. Pay very close attention to the tick that my character starts running. This is how you can endlessly run the head. To do this right, you need to click on the tick before you need to run. This is because your click is registered on the tick after you click. So if I click on tick 4, that means my character will start running on tick 1. Keep in mind, you can't force the head to turn earlier by standing on the safe tiles earlier. Once you feel like you've mastered this, I recommend running back and forth between the melee hand basic tile markers. These are the tiles you'll be using when learning the melee methods. We know that the head turns depending on where you're standing in the room. However, this is also dependent on what hand you're attacking. If you're standing on the marked left side of the room while attacking the mage hand, the head will turn to the left. If you're standing on the marked right side of the room while attacking the melee hand, the head will turn to the right. The Great Olm can rise with 3 different phases. This can be the Crystal phase, Acid phase, or the Flame phase. It can do 2 different attacks depending on what phase it is. We'll be calling these phase-specific attacks. Each phase-specific has a small cooldown upon successfully being fired at the player. This means the Olm can't just spam phase-specifics back to back to back. During the Crystal phase, the Great Olm can fire crystal bombs at you. These bombs have a massive AoE with a radius of 7 by 7. Standing at the center of the bomb will deal up to 60 damage. 15 damage will be taken off for every tile you are away from the center. Standing 4 tiles away will ensure no damage is taken. During Crystal phase, the Great Olm can also target you with falling crystal shards. The chat box will warn you when this is happening in red text. Your character will then be surrounded by a red aura. To avoid this, I recommend turning run off and walking until the attack ends. You can also choose to click on individual tiles on the floor. Methods to avoid this while also attacking will be explained later. During the Acid phase, the Great Olm can fire random acid splats on the ground. These acid splats can poison you, and standing on them will repeatedly damage you anywhere from 3 to 6 damage. It can also target you with an acid trail. The chat box will warn you when this is happening in red text. Acid will then start to drip off of you, and acid pools will trail behind you. Once on the ground, they'll function the same way as an acid splat. When trailed, I recommend turning run off and walking until you are no longer acid trailed. Running will actually create even more acid pools than intended. You can also choose to click on individual tiles. Methods to avoid this while also attacking will be explained later. After a short amount of time, all acid splats will eventually disappear. During the Flame phase, the Great Olm can deep burn you with a green fireball. Your character will then start to yell, "Burn with me." When burned, the player will take 5 damage and stats will be reduced by 2. This occurs every time the player yells "Burn with me" and happens 6 separate times before dissipating. This happens between an interval of 8 ticks, so the burns are predictable on when they happen. This can be helpful when trying to use the redemption prayer or when to restore your stats. It can also fire 2 flame walls at you. This will trap you between them. You have a short amount of time to escape, otherwise you'll take a significant amount of damage. Water spells, ice spells, or humidify can all be used to escape. If for some reason you forgot all of your water spells, you can use a water-filled gourd vial. If you want to use thralls and you're still learning, you can actually bring a watering can that has 8 charges. You can also use the Grickeler's can if you have it. Eventually, you'll be able to dodge the flame walls 100% of the time. To do this, run 2 tiles away from where Olm is going to flame wall you. You can never really predict when Olm is going to flame wall you, so during flame phase, you'll always have to be ready to dodge at every moment the Olm can attack you. The timing for when Olm can potentially flame wall you is the same as the timing for when the head turns, which is every 4 ticks. If you've already mastered running the head normally, then dodging the flame wall should come naturally. Click 1 tick before the Olm can fire a flame wall at you, just like running the head. Your click will register on the next tick, successfully allowing you to dodge the flame wall. Flame walls can be nulled from ever happening. This is very helpful for later methods. They can't spawn if there's a wall next to you. This is because the flame wall needs both sides to spawn. In the same way that you can dodge flame walls by timing it properly, you can also stand next to a wall on the same tick that the Olm tries to flame wall you. Where Olm can see you can also be used to null the flame walls. This is because the flame walls can only spawn within the Olm's line of sight. So for example, in these images here, if the player were to stand on any of these tiles, it actually can't fire a flame wall at you. Imagine that there's an invisible wall outside of the Olm's line of sight, which prevents the flame walls from spawning at all. In short, the crystal bombs, the fallen crystal shards, the acid splat, the acid trail, the deep burn, and the flame wall are all phase-specific attacks that can be fired in their respective phases. When you enter the room, the phase that it rises with is completely random. This is during phase 1 of the fight. Once you've killed both hands, the mid phase will start. The mid phase will always happen between phase 1, 2, and 3. During the mid phase, the Great Olm won't spawn for a short amount of time. You can use this time to restore any health or prayer points. Falling crystal chunks will also start falling from above. Some of these will be randomly scattered throughout the room, while others will specifically target where the player currently is. The crystal chunks can damage you within a 3x3 radius. Standing directly under the shadow will deal anywhere between 16 to 25 damage. Standing only one tile away from the shadow will deal anywhere between 10 to 16 damage. A great way to mindlessly avoid this damage is by running 2 tiles in any direction repeatedly. This is similar to dodging the meteors during Tekton. Just make sure to keep moving during the mid phase and you'll be fine. The Great Olm would then rise on the opposite side. This is now phase 2 of the fight. Phase 2 will be either of the 2 phases that weren't on phase 1. For example, if phase 1 was the crystal phase, phase 2 can only be either the acid phase or the flame phase. You can't have 2 of the same phases in the same solo raid. Once you've killed both hands, the Great Olm will again rise on the opposite side from where it was defeated. This is now phase 3 of the fight. The Great Olm doesn't rise with a specific phase on phase 3. Instead, he has the power of all 3 phases combined into one. This means he can use all phase-specific attacks. The head will also start to glow on phase 3. When either of the hands are killed, a healing bar will appear above it. If the healing bar reaches full HP, the hand will reset back to full HP. In order to bring it to the next phase, you have to kill both of the hands within the specific time frame. Once the hands are finally defeated, the head phase will begin. The head can only really be damaged by range attacks. Along with this, the Great Olm can attack with all crystal, acid, and flame phase specifics, as well as its normal auto attacks. Falling crystal chunks will also continue to fall on the ground, just like during the mid phase. It also gains the ability to fire 2 blue healing pools within the room. Standing in either of these will prevent the Great Olm from healing. You don't need to stand in both of them. Timing is important here in order to dodge the crystal chunks while also making it in time to reach the healing pools. Reaching the healing pool early doesn't do anything. In fact, going early may cause you to take even more damage from the fallen crystal chunks. Standing on the pool early and running away will not work. You only need to be on the healing pool for the final tick. This is the tick that determines whether it'll heal or not. After that, you are free to run away. The healing pools will stay for a few seconds after that, but they're inactive. The timing on the healing pool is the same for the head turning. If you've previously mastered this, then perfectly timing the healing pools will also be a breeze. Once you've defeated the head phase, your raid is finally complete. The Great Olm follows a very predictable attack cycle. Understanding how this attack cycle works will greatly increase how fast you learn. Before explaining the attack cycle, we have to divide each attack that happens as 2 separate attacks. These attacks will either be a basic attack or a special attack. First, we'll be explaining the basic attacks. These are also known as auto attacks. Some of the Olm's basic attacks are the ranged attack and the mage attack. Protection prayers against both significantly reduces damage taken and does not grant you full protection. The attack that Olm first attacks with is random. This means that you'll never know what to start praying against. The best thing to do is pray accordingly to what you're most vulnerable to. For example, if I'm in full Torva, I should probably pray mage because my range defense is incredibly high. Once the Olm attacks you with either attack, the next attack will most likely be the same attack. Unfortunately, this isn't guaranteed. This means that if the Olm attacks with a magic attack, you should assume that the next attack will also be a magic attack. Olm has a 1 in 5 chance when deciding to switch attack styles. This means that its next attack has a 1 in 5 chance of being a ranged attack. Because you can never predict for sure when it'll swap attack styles, sometimes you'll just have to take the damage. Once the Olm does change attack styles, this is when you should also change your protection prayers. Another of the Olm's basic attacks are the prayer draining orbs. There are 3 different orbs, each that needs to be prayed against correctly. Protect melee against the red melee sphere. Protect range against the green range sphere. Protect magic against the purple magic sphere. The chat box will also warn you which sphere is being fired at you. This can be useful if you're not paying attention or if you're in team raids. If you don't have a protection prayer activated when the orb is initially fired at you, you won't lose any prayer points. This should never really happen because I don't know why you wouldn't have your prayers activated. If you do have a protection prayer activated, your prayer points are reduced by a whopping 50%. It's strongly recommended to try to keep your prayer low in order to not lose as many prayer points throughout the fight. Losing 10 prayer points by sitting at 20 is much more beneficial than losing 45 prayer points by sitting at 90. If you pray against the orb correctly, no HP will be lost. If you fail, you'll end up losing 50% of your HP. Make sure to keep your prayer activated until the orb completely disappears. The phase-specific attacks are also classified as basic attacks. It is very important that you do not confuse these as special attacks. To summarize all of this up, the ranged and magic attack, the prayer draining spheres, and the phase-specific attacks are all classified as basic attacks. Now to discuss what the Olm's special attacks are. Olm's specials are attacks that are not fired directly from the Olm itself. This is why they're categorized as specials and not basic attacks. The specials that can happen are the Crystal Outburst, the Lightning, the Portal Swap, and the Healing Hand. The Crystal Outburst will spawn under you. Just step away to avoid any damage. Lightning will spawn on each side of the room and will start moving towards the opposite side. Just stand east or west to avoid them. They can spawn all on one side, so be careful for the Great Wall. If you get hit by lightning, you'll take a small amount of damage, you'll be stunned for a bit, and your overhead prayers will be deactivated. You also can't reactivate your overhead prayers for a short amount of time. If timed properly, you can actually run straight through the lightning. This is fairly easy to pull off and helps to not lose any DPS. To do this, you'll want to click when the lightning is 2 tiles away from you. The portal swap will teleport you to a randomly placed portal somewhere in the room. The other portal will spawn within 10 tiles of you. Once the portal swap starts, you have 8 ticks to get to the other one. You will then be forcibly teleported to the other portal. This will deal 5 damage for every tile you're away. Once you receive the message that the teleport attack has no effect, you're free to run away. You can also time running off tick perfectly, but that requires a bit more practice. The healing hand can only happen on phase 3 of a solo raid, and heals the melee hand for how much damage you were initially going to deal. Simply avoid hitting the hand and wait until the symbol above it disappears. The melee hand is what controls the special attacks. When specials occur, a symbol will appear on the melee hand. This tells you exactly what special is currently happening. If the melee hand is either dead or crippled, no specials will occur. The damage to cripple the melee hand is greater than or equal to 5% of the base HP. This means in a solo raid, the damage to cripple the melee hand is greater than or equal to 30. Now to explain Olm's attack cycle. The attack cycle is very predictable and can be understood now that you know the difference between a basic attack and a special. The attack cycle goes like this: basic attack 1, empty event, basic attack 2, special. We'll be labeling the basic attacks as just basic to make this easier to follow. Basics are also known as autos, and empty events are commonly referred to as null. This is just to avoid any confusion with other guides and other players. These specials also follow a set pattern in the attack cycle. The first special will always be the Crystal Outburst. The next special will be the Lightning Attack, followed by the Portal Swap. Then after the Portal Swap, the specials will reset and restart back again with the Crystal Outburst. However, if it's phase 3, the next special after the Portal Swap will be the Healing Hand. Then it'll reset to the Crystal Outburst. I'll be demonstrating the attack cycle and allowing you to see it for yourself. This should make it much easier to understand. In this case, because the phase just started, the special will always be the Crystal Outburst. Basic 1, empty event, basic 2, special. This time it's the lightning attack because this always happens after the Crystal Outburst. Basic 1, empty event, basic 2, special. Now it's the Portal Swap because this always happens after lightning. Basic 1, empty event, basic 2, special. Because this isn't phase 3, the specials have reset and restarted again with the Crystal Outburst. From here on out, the attack cycle will continue and the specials will reset until the phase is over. On phase 3, the Healing Hand will be the special after the Portal Swap. Each event that happens in the cycle happens every 4 ticks. This is the same amount of ticks as turning the head. The head can only turn every 4 ticks, and can only turn at the same time as one of these events are supposed to happen. This means that you can skip something in the attack cycle by making the head turn instead. The specials will always continue in cycle no matter what. When you're running the head, you'll sometimes be skipping specials. In this scenario, we just had Crystal Outburst. Basic 1, empty event, basic 2. This time we'll be forcing the head to turn on the special, which would have been lightning. Basic 1, empty event, basic 2. Once again, we'll be forcing the head to turn on the special, which would have been Portal Swap. Basic 1, empty event, basic 2. As you can see, the cycle continued as normal, and healing hands happened because this is phase 3. These specials in the attack cycle are static. They can never move even when the head is forcibly turned to skip them. However, basic attacks can move over to the next event when the head is turned on that specific event. This will be confusing at first, but understanding this is very important for later methods such as 4-to-1. To demonstrate this, we'll start off with the Crystal Outburst special. Right after this will be basic 1. However, let's turn the head instead of letting basic 1 happen. The basic 1 will actually move over to the next event. Now the attack cycle will be basic 1 and the empty event. Immediately after, it'll be basic 2, then the special. This would be really confusing to see without knowing that basics can move over. Skipping empty events don't really do anything because you can't really move nothing over. Now let's try turning the head on basic 2 instead. We'll once again start off with another crystal outburst. Basic 1. Empty event. We'll turn the head here when basic 2 is supposed to happen. Now basic 2 will be moved over to the next event. Here you can see basic 2 and the special happening at the same time. Then it'll be basic 1, followed by the empty event, and the attack cycle will continue as normal. Pathing in this game can be confusing, but understanding how it works is very important to learn how to do each method. If you feel like you understand pathing well enough, then feel free to skip this part of the video. While you're running, your character moves 2 tiles per tick. You're basically teleporting over a tile when running. This means that running 8 tiles will take you 4 ticks. Moving a total of 7 tiles will also take you 4 ticks. This is because you need 3 ticks to run 6 tiles, but a 4th tick for another tile. When attacking something, your character will attempt to attack and move on the same tick. If whatever you're attacking is only 1 or 2 tiles away from you, your character will attack it on the same tick. This is commonly known as dragging or being dragged. The red tiles are where the melee hand is attackable from without moving. The blue tiles are only 1 tile away, which means you'll be able to attack instantly as if you were on the red tiles. From the green tiles, you're only 2 tiles away and also able to attack instantly. In terms of ticks, there is no difference between attacking from any of these tiles. From the orange tiles, you are now 3 tiles away. You need 2 tiles to run towards the hand, and 1 tile to attack the hand, which will take 2 ticks. From the white tiles, you are now 4 tiles away. You need 2 tiles to run towards the hand, and 2 tiles to attack the hand, taking up 2 ticks as well. Because of how pathing works, you can actually run or teleport over acid splats and the lightning. An example here shows manually clicking to avoid the acid. Had I just clicked on this specific tile, I would have ended up running right on top of the acid. A more exaggerated example here shows the same movement, but teleporting over acid due to how the running mechanic works. Because of how perfectly these acid splats were placed, I don't need to make any manual adjustments to dodge them. Keep in mind, this is only for mechanics in the chambers of Xeric. Some mechanics, such as Zarpus' acid splat from TOB, can't be run over. When walking, your character will only move 1 tile per tick. You can also click individual tiles every tick and have the same effect. This can be very helpful in dodging certain mechanics. When using a long-ranged weapon, depending on how far away you are, you can also be dragged while attacking on the same tick, similar to melee. This is specifically important for mage hand running. On this specific tile here is where you can reach and attack the mage hand while standing still. This is specifically for the 4-tick powered stabs and on the accurate attack style. This means that if I'm 1 or 2 tiles away from this tile, away from the mage hand, I will both move and attack the mage hand at the same time. This is being dragged and attacking on the same tick. This is 2 tiles away. And this is 1 tile away. This is 3 tiles away. Being 3 tiles away means that you cannot attack instantly. Instead, it'll take an extra tick for your character to run 2 tiles, then be 1 tile away to make the attack. When you start the fight, you have to kill the mage hand before the melee hand. If you attempt to kill the melee hand first, you'll end up crippling it. This prevents you from attacking the melee hand for a short amount of time. The melee hand only cripples if the mage hand is alive, which is why killing the mage hand comes first. The melee hand can only cripple on phase 1 and 2 of the fight. You can't cripple the melee hand on phase 3. This is the same phase when the head starts to glow. 4-tick Mage Running is the most common method when learning. This is because the shadow is more expensive and is objectively the harder method to learn. You also have access to the Synq staff, which can heal the player and is more user-friendly. 3-tick Mage Running and Shadow Mage Running will be explained later in the video. For this method, you don't want to be in the long-range attack style unless specifically told to do so. This is because you need to be dragged for one of the attacks during this method, and you can only be dragged here by using the accurate attack style. To start this method, stand on the right side safe spot. This is commonly known as the ring finger safe spot. For now, you only need to focus on the 2 head turn tiles. These are marked by the orange tiles in this clip. The Reqs tile is the furthest tile you're able to attack the mage hand from without moving. My true tile is indicated by the blue corner tiles. For this method, the first attack needs to happen on this tile. The second attack needs to happen on this tile. And the third attack can be anywhere between these tiles shown here. The head can only turn every 4 ticks. This means that 4-tick Mage Running is perfectly timed. Remember, your clicks are always registered on the tick after you click. In this example here, the head turns on tick 1. To Mage Run, you need to attack the head on the same exact tick that the head turns on. This means I need to be clicking the head on tick 4. This is very important. You don't want to attack the head 1 tick too early or 1 tick too late. To start this method, click the mage hand right before the head is about to turn. You'll then attack the mage hand and move on the same tick. On the same tick that you just attacked, click and make your way over to the other safe spot tile. You want to click the safe spot tile the moment you see the XP drop. This click is important and needs to happen on tick 1, so you start moving on tick 2. Ticks 2, 3, and 4 will be used to run towards the other safe spot tile. Attacking and running towards the other safe spot only takes 4 ticks. 1 tick, 2 ticks, 3 ticks, 4 ticks. Now you need to click the hand so your attack happens again on tick 1. Remember, this second attack needs to happen here. For your third attack, make sure you are again attacking anywhere on these tiles. On the 4th tick, you absolutely need to be back on the ring finger safe spot. Now just rinse and repeat until the mage hand is dead. Remember, you need to be attacking at the exact same time as when the head turns. This means that you need to be preemptively clicking 1 tick before it even happens. Because you're attacking every 4 ticks, and the head also turns every 4 ticks, there should be absolutely 0 downtime between your attacks. This is a more simplified version of Mage Running. Most people that are doing this method wrong are messing up the first hit of the cycle. In this example here, I purposely click 1 tick late and attempt to make it to the other safe spot. Here, the head is already turning before my attack even happens. This is what you need to be avoiding. Even though I did everything right and clicked to the other safe spot immediately after the first attack, I will never make it in time. You'll constantly keep failing because now you're always 1 tick behind. To fix it, just skip a hit and reset the Mage Running. In this example, I timed the first attack correctly. You can see that my attack and the head moves at the exact same time. Remember, to do this right, you need to click on the other safe spot immediately after your attack the moment you get the XP drop. Here, I purposely click on the other safe spot tile 1 tick late. It might seem like I'll make it in time, but as you can see, I don't. This is because you need all 4 ticks to make it to the other side. If you miss even 1 tick, you'll always just be 1 tile short. These are the 2 most common mistakes that players make when learning this. As I said before, make sure you don't use long range unless directly told to do so. In this clip, I'm doing everything right, except now I'm on long range. Here I didn't get dragged 2 tiles ahead, which means I won't make it to the other safe spot. As I said before, the head will turn depending on which hand you're attacking. I'll be explaining a very simplified version on how this works. There's more details behind this, but it'll just confuse you. Because I'm attacking the mage hand and running to the left side of the room, the head is being turned to the left. This is dependent on the first hit of the cycle. However, sometimes the head doesn't turn to the left when doing this. This is because the head turns dependent on if you actually did damage or not. So if you end up splashing or doing no damage on the first hit, there's a chance for the head to turn center instead of turning to the left. Here's an example of splashing the first hit, but the head turns normally. You can tell I splashed because I didn't get an XP drop. Here's another example of splashing, but the head turns center instead. This can be annoying, but the most efficient way to deal with this is to continue the cycle as normal and pray against the attack. The timing stays the exact same way as if it had turned normally, so just continue as if you never splashed at all. Using the Mage Start can help prevent this, as it consistently damages the mage hand. This means that it's much more likely to turn left even if you end up splashing, but still not guaranteed. Normally you want to continue as if you never splashed, but this is different if it is either Flame Phase or Phase 3. The hit that you tank could potentially be the Flame Wall attack. This can heavily hinder your mage running and needs to be avoided at any time. Remember that the flame wall can be nulled by either standing next to a wall or by standing next to the outer areas of the Olm's line of sight. In this example, once I splashed, I continued the second hit normally on the usual tile. Immediately after, you want to run one tile to the left of the ring finger tile. This is right on the edge of the Olm's line of sight. Doing this will null the flame wall from spawning if it ends up happening. You only need to be standing on that null tile for that specific tick. Right after you null the flame wall, run back to the ring finger tile and continue as usual. If you want to save some run energy, you can switch your one attack while nulling the flame wall to long range. This prevents you from getting dragged, but remember to switch back to accurate immediately after. If you don't want to take any damage, you can run to the other side. Once you've splashed, continue doing the second hit as usual. Right after the second hit, you can start running to the far left safe spot tile to not take any damage. Doing this means you'll be missing an attack, so it's not really recommended. Then run back at the same time the head turns towards you. Continue with the third hit of the cycle, then continue mage running. If the head does end up turning to the left, you can actually react to this and just click back to where you normally would. Then, just continue as usual. It's much better to always tank a hit to continue attacking the mage hand. Saving HP leads to missing hits and is only recommended if you absolutely need to. This method while mage running saves you some run energy. This method involves individual clicking. You're substituting each tick with an individual click. You want to do this after the second hit and after the third hit. You'll have to run for only one of these ticks, but it doesn't matter when. For this example, after the second hit, you can run immediately for one tick. Then click each tile while making your way to the third hit, and then towards the ring finger. You can also do this by toggling your run energy. I personally don't use control clicking, so I'll be using the orb instead. I like to turn off my run after the second hit. After the third hit, and one tick before I reset the cycle, this is when I turn it back on. Sometimes while mage running, you'll end up getting hit by a phase specific. If you're hit by falling crystal shards, you can continue the method by using a different lane of tiles. Try avoiding the tiles you were previously on, and you should be fine. If you get hit by the acid trail, the first hit of the cycle will drag you so you don't take any damage. Avoid any tiles covered in acid, and take advantage of the run mechanic to teleport over acid splats. You'll take a couple hits here and there, but it's worth it to keep in cycle. Mage running can be done on more lanes towards the other side, so you have plenty of space to work with. There's still 2 more methods for 4-tick mage running. They're not important for beginners, and it's only for after you've mastered normal mage running. The first of the 2 is commonly known as 1 tile forward. This is for when you're 1 tick behind normal mage running. Being 1 tick behind can happen because of Dragon Warhammer starts, or by doing the 4-tick 4-0 method. Instead of attacking the mage hand at the same time the head turns, you'll be attacking 1 tick after it turns. For the first tick that you would normally attack the head, you'll instead move 1 tile forward. From this tile here, you are still not in range to attack the mage hand while standing still. This means you'll be dragged in order to be in range to attack the hand. From this tile here, I have a 3-tick window to reach the other safe spot in 6 tiles. 1 tick to attack the hand and be dragged to move 2 tiles, and 2 ticks to move the remaining 4 tiles. Right after you move 1 tile forward, you continue the mage running as normal. Because I am 1 tick behind, my attack will happen on tick 2 instead. Your second and third attack can be moved to different tiles, but that's completely up to you. Here's what it looks like without all the tile markers, and while toggling my run energy. The second method is also used when you're 1 tick behind. Instead of being 1 tile forward, you'll be 1 tile further. When you're 1 tile further, you want to time your first click the same exact way as the original mage running. Instead of attacking, you'll be dragged to the same tile as the 1 tile forward method. Your first attack will then happen again on tick 2. You'll continue mage running just like the previous method. You need to make sure you make it to the same 1 tile further to continue it. So why is this important? Isn't this the exact same method but using more run energy? While it does use more run energy, it's easier to do. It doesn't seem easier to do now, but that's because this is without combining it with the 4-0 method, which will be explained later in the video. For now, it's just important to acknowledge that this method exists. The method to Dragon Warhammer or Elder Maul spec at the start of each phase is different depending on what phase it is. This is commonly known as a Mage Start. On phase 1, the head immediately turns towards you once it becomes attackable. On phase 2 and 3, the head doesn't turn immediately. This means that any Mage Start for phase 2 can also be done on phase 3. The only difference is that the hand doesn't cripple on phase 3. This means you're able to do a Mage Start with the double Dragon Warhammer spec on phase 3. You can add a Scythe hit to the Mage Start to save a tick, but it isn't necessary. Once you enter Olm, I recommend running to the center of the room. This is so that you're at an equal distance from either Mage Start. Whichever side Olm spawns on, make sure to run to the Mage Start safe spot. Then hover over the Mage Hand until it becomes attackable. For phase 1, attack the Mage Hand the moment the option appears, and immediately click to the other safe spot. While you're running, switch into your melee gear with the Dragon Warhammer. If you have a lot of switches like I do, it's more important to switch to accuracy boosting equipment to increase the odds of landing your spec. Once you're set, attack the melee hand using the same timing as if you were attacking the mage hand. You'll start running towards the melee hand on the same tick the head turns. You can use this free tick to turn on your spec and prayers. After your spec lands, make sure to stall a tick before running back to the left safe spot. Running too early will cause the head to attack you. Once you start running to the left, switch back to your mage gear and immediately attack the mage hand. From this attack, you can see that it's 1 tick before the head turns. Immediately after the attack, start making your way to the other safe spot. To simplify this, imagine that this magic attack was the second magic attack in the normal mage running cycle. Continue doing the third mage attack as usual. Because your second mage attack was one tick before the head turned, you'll have to stall a tick before you start mage running. After the third mage attack, you can click for 4 ticks to stall a tick. Then you can start mage running as usual. This is what it should look like at normal speed. To add a Scythe, do the phase 1 Mage Start as usual, and instead of running to the left, Scythe the hand instead. Move to the right safe spot, and you can start Mage Running as usual without stalling. For the phase 2 Mage Start, make sure you are 2 tiles away from the usual Mage safe spot. Hover over the Mage hand and attack it immediately after the option appears. If you learned the 1 tile forward Mage Running method, this next part will be easy. After your attack, walk towards the right safe spot to turn the head. You can't attack the mage hand like usual here because you are 1 tick behind the cycle. Walk 1 tile forward and attack the mage hand. Run to the left safe spot and Dragon Warhammer Spec just like the phase 1 start. The rest of the phase 2 mage start is the same as phase 1. Make sure to stall the necessary ticks and start mage running as usual. This is what it should look like at normal speed. This is the phase 2 Mage Start with the Scythe. If you've been keeping up with the previous methods, I shouldn't have to explain this. Because the melee hand can't cripple on phase 3, you can land 2 Dragon Warhammer specs simultaneously. The start of phase 3 is the same as phase 2. After you've specced and attacked the mage hand, this is where it deviates. Switch back into melee gear and spec the hand again. If done correctly and landed the spec, you'll be able to run back to the left safe spot again without taking any hits. From here, make sure you have your lance equipped. Attack the melee hand using the same timing as if you were attacking the mage hand. From here, you can either do the 1 tile forward or the 1 tile further mage running method. The 1 tile further method is much easier to do when switches are involved. At the same time that you get the melee XP drop, you'll want to click on the 1 tile further. I find it easier to click in the general area that's further away and make sure that I focus on timing the method properly. Both ways are acceptable. From here, attack the mage hand using the 1 tile further method. This might take some practice, and you may want to lower the amount of switches. Then, continue mage running using whatever method. This is what it should look like at normal speed. When you're about to kill the mage hand, I recommend doing this method to get yourself 3 free hits. After killing the mage hand, something confusing can happen. This is commonly known as the mage hand glitch. From what we know, the Olm fired 2 basic attacks in succession without a special. This would normally mean that these 2 events just happen in the cycle. That means turning the head here would normally mean a special attack, right? Then it should be basic 1, but somehow the special happened right after. So how is this possible? The details behind it are pretty confusing, and it's not really important to cover. This doesn't happen often, but to avoid this, I recommend always forcing the head to turn, like in this clip here. This means you'll never have to deal with it. Avoiding the mage hand glitch is important for methods like 4-1, where you'll need to be skipping specials. I have Ayak Mage Running is pretty easy to learn, and is second best behind the Shadow. If you've already learned 4-tick Mage Running, then this should be easy. Go to the melee safe spot tile and wait to attack the hand. Make sure your attack style is unaccurate. Just like 4-tick Mage Running, attack the hand at the same time the head turns. For this to work, you have to click 1 tick before the head turns. Continue the cycle without losing any ticks. Attack once while being dragged. Attack once at the head. And attack one more time at the thumb. For the 4th attack, make sure to switch to long range and move 1 tile further. This is to make sure you're ready to turn the head right after. Then just repeat the Mage Running. In short, 3 attacks on accurate and 1 attack on long range. The first and easiest method for the melee hand is known as 3-to-1. This is because you land 3 hits while tanking 1 hit. This is the foundation for learning the more common method 4-to-1. As of right now, the best weapon for this is the Dragon Hunter Lance. Other 4-tick weapons also work, but the Lance is so much better than every other option. The melee hand's defense is the same across everything. This means you'll need to change the attack style of your Lance depending on your gear. So for example, Crush with Inquisitor and Slash with Oathplate. At this point, you should have mastered Mage Running by now, or at least understand the concept. If you know how to Mage Run, doing 3-to-1 should be really easy. You can technically start doing 3-to-1 at any point, but I find it much easier to explain when you're at the head. To start, you need to be on this tile, and your first attack will happen on this tile. This tile is also commonly known as the thumb. Remember, there's no tick difference between attacking on this tile and this tile. Once you're at the head safe spot, click the melee hand using the same timing as if you were maging the mage hand. If you haven't learned that yet, click 1 tick before the head turns. So for example, in this clip, I click on tick 4 because the head turns on tick 1. Notice how I start moving at the exact same time the head turns. For 3-to-1, all of your attacks will be 1 tick after any event happens. Events can be substituted with head turns, so all of your attacks are also 1 tick after any head turns. You'll move for 1 tick and then attack the melee hand. This is indicated by the orange true tile. In this example, this means I attack on tick 2 and should always be attacking on tick 2. After your attack, immediately run to the ring finger safe spot. You're clicking to move pretty much at the same time your XP drop happens. Running to this tile will force the head to turn to the right. After the head turns, attack the hand again. The 3rd attack absolutely needs to happen on this tile. This is because you have 2 ticks remaining to make it back. Immediately after your 3rd attack, run back to the head safe spot. Then continue 3-to-1 until the hand is dead. This is what it looks like at normal speed. The issue with this is that it's a 12-tick cycle. 3 hits at 4 ticks each. Olm's attack cycle is a 16-tick cycle. This means that specials will eventually happen when you tank a hit. Getting a portal swap or the healing hand here can be very annoying. There's no avoiding this, which is why 4-to-1 is the better method. The 1 hit that you tank can also be a phase specific. Attacking while dealing with each phase specific is a very important skill. To dodge the flame wall, stand 2 tiles away from the thumb tile. Then run to the thumb at the same time the head attacks. This means clicking to run 1 tick before it happens. For flame phase, you have to assume every attack will be a flame wall, so make sure to always path the same way. To dodge the falling crystal shards, just continue doing 3-to-1 as usual, but going 1 tile away from the hand. This makes it so that you're always moving, and dragging helps you dodge without losing any DPS. On phase 3, any phase specific could happen. You should assume every attack can be a flame wall, falling crystals, or the acid trail. To do this, just combine both of the previous methods. Dodge as if it could be the flame wall, but also standing one tile back for the fallen crystals. The movement should look like this. Dodging the flame wall would look like this. This can be done on phase 1 and 2, so it might be better to just learn 3-1 this way. While doing 3-1, there's no point in learning how to acid walk. It's a complete waste of time, considering you should learn how to 4-1 as soon as possible. If you do get acid trail during 3-1, I recommend turning off your run and walking it off. If you absolutely want to try it, here's an example of acid walking during 3-1. Scuffed Olm is a relatively unknown mechanic, but it changes some things for later methods such as 4-1. When the Olm becomes scuffed, some mechanics in the room are delayed by 1 tick. Most importantly, this includes the fallen crystal chunks, crystal bombs, and flame wall mechanics. I won't be going over every single mechanic that gets delayed, because these are the only few that actually matter. The Great Olm can either be scuffed or normal. How it changes between the two behind the scenes is fairly complicated, so there's not really much reason to try and explain it. What matters is when a normal Olm becomes scuffed, and when a scuffed Olm becomes normal, it happens periodically and almost randomly. So in the middle of the fight, it can randomly scuff or unscuff, and it's up to you to pay attention to that. So how do you know if it's a scuffed Olm? When you're doing the phase 1 Mage Start, pay close attention to how the head moves. If the head bobs normally and turns towards the player smoothly, then it's a normal Olm. If the head spasms drastically and skips the animation to turn, then it's a Scuffed Olm. If it scuffs or unscuffs during your fight, you can also tell by just looking at the head. If the head continues to bob smoothly while turning, then it's a normal Olm. If the head stalls while turning and pauses after every attack, then it's a Scuffed Olm. Falling crystal chunks will land 1 tick later during a Scuffed Olm. This is what it looks like normally. The fallen crystal chunks immediately break and deal damage when touching the floor. This is what it looks like during a Scuffed Olm. The chunks are delayed by 1 tick and break after they disappear. Some players actually prefer when it's scuffed because this makes it a lot easier to dodge them. Crystal bombs blow up 1 tick later, giving you extra time to run away. Flame walls appear 1 tick later and disappear 1 tick later. This means that dodging the flame wall can be troublesome for different methods. This will be explained much more in depth later on, but for now, here's what it looks like side by side. This mechanic is very important and only applies to when the Olm is spawned on the west side. If you remember this clip from earlier, the flame wall can't spawn here if you're standing on the red tiles. It can't spawn flame walls if either of the walls are outside of its line of sight or blocked by a wall. However, you can also null the flame wall by standing 1 tile away from the red tiles. This is because it needs all 10 tiles on each side to spawn the flame wall. On the other side, you can see that this tile is blocked from a weird bump in the wall. This means you can null the flame wall here. Before starting 4-1, it's heavily implied that you've already learned and mastered the previous sections. If you try learning 4-1 without understanding the basics behind it, you'll just end up confused. 3-1 is a 12-tick cycle where the special can eventually overlap during the 1 hit that you tank. This is because the Olm's attack cycle can be simplified every 16 ticks. 4-1 is also on a 16-tick cycle. This means you can force the special to never happen on the 1 hit that you tank. Here's an overlay of the attack cycle so you can understand what's actually happening during 4-1. Your attack will always happen one tick after any event, including any head turns. This first hit is where you tank basic 1. After that is the empty event. This is a free 4-tick window to land your 4th attack. Just like 3-1, the final hit of 4-1 needs to happen on this tile. When you run the head here, you're then skipping basic 2. This specific head turn is what's skipping all of the special attacks during 4-1. If the head turns here in replacement of a special, 4-1 will always be set. This is what it looks like in repeat. Pay very close attention to when each event happens. Tank basic 1 here. Empty event gives you a free hit. Run the head to skip basic 2. And turn the head here to skip the special. What's difficult about 4-1 isn't the clicking behind it, but more so how to get into the cycle at all. This is what I call the lazy method. You need to pay attention to the attack cycle for when the special is about to happen. Basic 1. Empty event. Basic 2. This is when you want to turn the head to skip the special. Delay your attack to be one tick after the head turns or does an event. Now 4-1 is set as long as you continue to attack every 4 ticks. To specify, I strongly advise against learning 4-1 this way. The lazy method is just to understand how 4-1 works in terms of the attack cycle. Doing it this way, you're losing an incredible amount of DPS. Basically, don't get into the habit of learning 4-1 this way. There are 4 proper methods to set up 4-1 after killing the mage hand. These methods don't risk the mage hand glitch, which was previously discussed at the end of Mage Running. After you kill the mage hand, you need to figure out where you are in the cycle. There are only 4 possible options, hence 4 methods. When setting it up, you won't know which basic you tanked until the next event happens. This is method 1. In this clip, we tanked a basic attack. We have no idea if this was basic 1 or basic 2. As I went towards the thumb, the Olm stayed idle and did nothing for 4 ticks. This means that was the empty event, and the previous hit I tanked was basic 1. Now run the head to skip basic 2, and turn the head here to skip the special. This is what it looks like at normal speed. This is method 2. We have no idea if this is either basic 1 or basic 2. Then, a special occurred right after the basic. From the attack cycle, we know for sure that the basic we tanked was actually basic 2. So now all you have to do is attack the hand and tank basic 1, and stay for the empty event. Then run the head here to skip basic 2, and turn the head here to skip the special. This is what it looks like at normal speed. This is method 3. Here you immediately tank a back-to-back basic. We know that this is because basic 1 was moved over to the empty event from turning the head. So this back-to-back basic is actually basic 1 and the empty event, followed by basic 2 right after. Once you've recognized this, you can run the head to avoid the special. Instead of running towards the right safe spot, keep the head centered. We know that basic 1 is right after, so now setting up 4-1 should be easy. Basic 1, empty event, run the head to skip basic 2, and turn the head here to skip the special. This is what it looks like at normal speed. This is method 4. This time you know exactly where you are in the cycle immediately. It fires a basic and a special at the same time. We know that this is basic 2 moved over to the special. So this first attack is basic 2 and the special. We know that basic 1 is right after the special. Basic 1, empty event, run the head to skip basic 2, and turn the head here to skip the special. This is what it looks like at normal speed. When you're in the 4-to-1 cycle, sometimes you'll end up hitting a few zeros. And just like the mage hand, the head can turn center if that happens. That's why this is called the noodle method. Using the melee thrall can help prevent this. If your second and third hit both hit a 0, the head can turn center on the empty event. Because of this, you'll have to tank basic 2. Stay near the melee hand and tank basic 2 instead of running the head. Then turn the head to skip the special and continue 4-to-1. This is what it looks like at normal speed. Be careful not to turn the head too early because you need to tank basic 2 to continue 4-to-1. Setting up 4-to-1 on flame phase uses the same methods, but your pathing is changed to always null any potential flame walls. This should also be done on phase 3. This is a bit more difficult for learners, but I strongly suggest coming back to this when you have more experience. The section for dealing with flame wall when you're already in 4-to-1 is much easier. By now, you should fully understand flame wall mechanics, including the weird flame wall null. The most important movement for setting up 4-to-1 during flame phase requires you to null the flame wall near the head. This movement is used for all 4 methods of setting it up. After your first attack to set up 4-to-1, continue to the ring finger as usual. Then, you need to instantly run 2 tiles towards the thumb and attack. After this, run towards the head to null the potential flame wall. This is 1 tile before you can force the head to turn. Attack the hand and repeat the movement again without losing any ticks. You should always be attacking every 4 ticks while doing this. You need to repeat the movement as necessary depending on where you are in the cycle. Doing this never chances any flame walls. This is what it looks like at normal speed. This is method 1 for flame phase. Null the potential flame wall twice to see where you are in the cycle. We know that this is basic 1 followed by the empty event. Run the head to skip basic 2, and turn the head here to skip the special. Make sure you null the flame wall here for basic 1. This is what it looks like at normal speed. This is method 2 for flame phase. Null the flame walls as necessary to see where you are in the cycle. We take an unknown basic followed by the special. This means that this was basic 2, then special. We know that this is followed by basic 1, so null the potential flame wall like this. Stay at the thumb during the empty event and set up 4 to 1 as usual. This is what it looks like at normal speed. This is method 3 for flame phase. Null the potential flame walls as necessary. From the second hit, we know that this is basic 1 and empty, followed by basic 2 for the back-to-back basic. Run the head to skip the special, and tank basic 1 without running to the ring finger. Make sure to null the potential basic 1 flame wall and attack the hand during the empty. Then just continue 4 to 1. This is what it looks like at normal speed. This is method 4 for flame phase. Null the potential flame walls. We know this is basic 2 and special, followed by basic 1 right after. Stay at the thumb during the empty event and set up 4 to 1 as usual. This is what it looks like at normal speed. If you noodle your second and third hit during 4 to 1, just stay at the hand when it centers. Tank basic 2 by nulling the potential flame wall, then continue 4 to 1 as usual. The flame phase mechanics when you're already in 4 to 1 mainly focuses on your pathing. This also changes if the Olm spawns on the east or west side. For the west side, you can null the flame wall here using the weird flame null trick. I prefer this over dodging because you can use the same method for P3 Acid Walk. If the Olm is unscuffed, you can dodge the flame wall on the ring finger tile. Because it's unscuffed, you're able to make it back in time right when the flame wall disappears. If it is scuffed, remember the flame walls appear and disappear one tick later. This means the flame wall will still be up by the time you try running back, cancelling your 4 to 1. I strongly recommend always nulling the flame wall here instead, whether it's P3 or not. Then you don't really need to pay any attention if it's scuffed or not. For the east side, you can null the flame wall like this. You have to be right up against the wall for this to work. I personally only recommend doing this on flame phase and not P3. Acid walking on P3 while doing this is a little annoying, so I prefer dodging instead. Instead of dodging on the ring finger, you want to spawn the flame wall 2 tiles further. This way, it doesn't matter whether it's scuffed or not. The flame wall doesn't block off the ring finger tile to turn the head, so you can continue 4 to 1 no matter what. This also makes acid walking on P3 much easier. Acid walking during 4 to 1 requires a lot of precise clicking. You'll need to click 1 tile back to drag yourself over the acid. In my opinion, the best way to learn acid walking is to watch the clip over and over. Then, start predicting where you're going to click. Eventually, you'll be able to fully predict how to acid walk. For the west side, this is the acid walk I recommend learning. This can be done for both the east and west side for acid phase. However, you shouldn't do this on the east side for phase 3 because you'll be risking flame wall. This is the Acid Walk for the east side on Phase 3. You dodge the potential Flame Wall whether it's scuffed or unscuffed while also being able to Acid Walk. The head can center if you end up noodling your hits. This is the Noodle Acid Walk, and it doesn't matter if it's east or west side. The Crystal Walk is pretty self-explanatory. Just click back to dodge the fallen crystal shards while maintaining DPS. There's not really a method, and it's more so just freestyle movement. This is an advanced method, but if you're low on supplies, you can tiki it off sound. The Mage sound effect is unique and different from the others. However, the range sound effect shares the same sound as firing crystal bombs and acid. This can be a little tricky, and you need to have a very good reaction time to tiki it. You also need to be a certain distance away from the head. Due to travel time, you don't have any time at all to react if you're right next to it. In these clips, I'm protecting range, and whenever I hear the range sound effect, I know that I'm high enough HP to tank it. However, the moment that I hear the magic attack is when I react fast enough to eat. Four to 0 is a 4-tick mage and melee method that can only be done on phase 3. It consists of 1 magic and 3 melee attacks. It's incredibly useful because you don't take any damage. Once you're in 4 to 0, all of your attacks will be 1 tick after the Olm's head turn. For this method, you should understand the 1 tile further method from the Mage Running section. You can start 4 to 0 by just doing a normal mage hit like your Mage Running. After the first hit, switch into your melee gear and attack the hand 2 times with melee. Run the head and do 1 more hit before switching back to mage and repeating the cycle. We'll be focusing on the 1 tile further method when maging the hand. You should always start this method after doing whatever Mage Start works for you. For example, this is how the start of 4-0 should look like with 2 specs. From here is when you'd start 4-0. This is with True Tile. The 2 tiles you'll be working with are these 2 tiles. The timing of your attacks is what actually matters. You can either click directly on the tiles, click in the general direction, or use the minimap. The main difference is the distance between where your mouse currently is and where you want to go. For example, I choose to click on the minimap because it's much easier to click there and then back to my gear. Your movements can sometimes look like this, but the attack cycle remains the same. Clicking general direction is also easier because you don't need to click precisely on each specific tile. If you splash your mage attack and the head turns center, you'll be skipping 2 melee attacks. You can continue without losing any ticks, so it's not a big deal. After your first melee attack, just run back to the start of 4-0 and do it again. If your first melee hit is a 0, stay for another hit and run back to the start of 4-0. Then just continue the method as usual. The 1 tile closer method is much more difficult. This is because you need to click precisely and it requires more clicks. This is technically run efficient, but I don't recommend learning this unless you're a god gamer. Scythe 3-1 is slightly better DPS than Lance 4-1. The obvious issue is that the Scythe is much harder to get. There are better methods such as Scythe 7-3 and Scythe Camping. Scythe 3-1 is much easier to learn while also taking less damage than these other methods. This method uses the exact same method as 4-1 when skipping the specials. It's strongly advised that you've already learned 4-1 before attempting this. Scythe 3-1 is a 15 tick cycle, and the Olm's attack cycle is 16 ticks. So every time you do a Scythe 3-1 cycle, you're delaying and missing 1 tick. 1 tick might not seem much, but it adds up over time. That's why other Scythe methods are better when you're ready. Set up 4-1 as usual and replace the first hit with a Scythe. The 1 tick that you delay is not until you've landed all 3 hits. After your third and final hit, delay 1 tick before starting the cycle again. I find the best way to do this is to click for 4 ticks and walk towards the head before your next attack. crystal walking should be pretty self-explanatory. For the west side, null the flame wall here just like you do in 4-1. I prefer dodging on the east side, so acid walking on phase 3 is a bit easier. Make sure to spawn the flame wall just like this so you don't interrupt Scythe 3-1. This acid wall can be used for either the east or west side. Do not do this for the east side on phase 3 because you'll be risking flame wall. Instead, this is the acid walk used for east side phase 3. Scythe 7-3 is a great method and is only slightly worse than Scythe Camping. You can skip straight to Scythe Camping, but you'll be taking much more damage. This is because you're able to skip every special and take a lot less damage while doing Scythe 7-3. Before starting Scythe 7-3, it's implied that you've already learned 4-1. This method consists of 4 Scythe attacks and 3 Lance attacks. This ends up being a 32 tick cycle. To start, set up 4-1 and replace the first hit with the Scythe. Do 4 Scythe hits while the head is facing towards you. After your 4th Scythe hit, run towards this tile and equip your Lance. Delay yourself here to skip the special and attack the hand without losing any ticks. For these 3 Lance attacks, make sure to keep the head centered. When the head turns towards you, run the head as if you were doing 4-1 again. Now that 4-1 is set, start Scythe 7-3 instead and continue. There are 3 hits that you tank during Scythe 7-3, so there are 3 separate instances where you'll need to deal with the flame wall. This is how to deal with the first tanked hit. On the west side, make sure to always null the flame wall here. On the east side, you can null the flame wall here. You can also dodge the flame wall if you want to instead. This is how to deal with the third tanked hit. The second tanked hit will be explained after this. Scythe 7-3 Flame Wall tech is affected by Scuffed Olm. Scuffed Flame Walls spawn 1 tick later. This specifically only matters for the second tanked hit. If the Olm is scuffed during the second tanked hit, stand at the center of the melee hand. Your next attack happens on the same tick that the Flame Wall can happen. After your 4th Scythe hit, run towards the head like you normally would. Scuffed Flame Walls will spawn 1 tick later, meaning you won't get trapped by them. And because of where it spawned, it won't affect your last 3 Lance hits. The Flame Wall will be gone by the time you're ready to start Scythe 7-3 again. If the Olm is normal, then you run into an issue called portal risk. After your 3rd Scythe hit, walk 2 tiles away from the hand like this. This is really important because you need to be able to attack the hand on the same tick the head attacks. This means you can't null the Flame Wall like you normally would here. On the 4th Scythe hit, attack the hand and click back to turn the head. You're doing this movement assuming that you're not getting Flame Walled and you're able to continue the method. If you don't get Flame Walled, then that's great. Unfortunately, we did get Flame Walled by an unscuffed Olm. This means that a special will happen because we didn't turn the head, and hopefully it isn't portals. Unlucky. This is what we call portal risk. For unscuffed Scythe 7-3, there's no way to deal with the portal risk, and you'll just have to take the L. In this clip, I was lucky enough that the portal spawned on the side where I can run to it. For Scythe 7-3 acid walking, the side it spawns on doesn't matter. There are 3 possible hits where you can be trailed by acid, so there are 3 different acid walks. Scythe Camping is currently the best DPS out of every melee method. However, it's only the best if there is 0 to very little tick loss. The time save between Scythe Camping and Scythe 7-3 is extremely minimal. We're talking a few seconds per melee hand, and that's assuming you lose 0 ticks. If you're not doing this properly, then Scythe 7-3 becomes the best choice for you. Losing 0 ticks while doing this is sometimes called World Scythe. I won't be doing a full explanation on this. Instead, I'll be explaining a watered down version of Scythe Camping, enough so that you can understand the basics of it. For those that do want to learn World Scythe in its entirety, I'll be linking a separate video in the description. The basics of this method is skipping the portal swap and dealing with each phase specific without losing any ticks. The portal swap will force you to lose DPS if it ends up across the room. You can also do this on phase 3, but you'll have to skip the healing hand special as well. You can still damage the hand if it's Crystal Outburst or Lightning, which is why you don't need to skip them. This is usually where you lose DPS if you don't know how to World Scythe. You'll end up having to turn the head while you're off tick to skip the portal swap. This loses a few ticks, and will eventually add up to the point that it's not worth it anymore. You can squeeze in a few lance hits here and there to get yourself on the right tick cycle, but at that point you might as well just Scythe 7-3. Here's a few examples of skipping portals without losing any ticks. The general method for this is paying attention to when lightning happens and act accordingly to dodge the portal swap. Dealing with the flame wall while scythe camping can be a little difficult. Just make sure you're always trying to null the flame wall while also paying attention to when to skip portals. Remember, this is just an example of many different variations. Sometimes you'll want to be closer to the thumb to skip portals properly. I knew what tick cycle I was on, so I was fine to stay on the far right for most of the time. Scythe 7-3 Flame Tech can be very helpful here. As a reminder, here are some examples. This is for Scuffed Olm. And this is for Unscuffed Olm. Acid walking while Scythe Camping is just improvising every acid trail. Always be ready to flame tech if it's phase 3, and pay attention to when to skip portals. Because you improvise every acid walk, some mistakes will happen and that's fine. Your main focus is not losing any DPS. Mage 7-3 is a mage melee method that's only done on phase 3. It's usually done with the Synq staff and the Scythe. This is better DPS than 4-0, but at the cost of taking damage. You'd only do this method if you don't have the Shadow. This method skips specials, and it's implied that you've already learned 4-1. The Dragon Hunter Lance is used to set up Mage 7-3. There's 2 different starts for Mage 7-3 depending on your specs. This is the Mage Start for 2 specs. After you double spec, use the lance for 2 hits as if you were doing 4-1. Continue with the first hit of 4-1 with the lance, then switch to the Scythe. Your first Scythe hit is actually the second Scythe hit in the Mage 7-3 cycle. So out of the 7 hits, this is now hit 2. This is the third hit. After your 4th hit, run far towards the other safe spot tile while switching into mage gear. You know you've timed this correctly when your 4th Scythe hit is 1 tick before the basic and you run on the same tick as the basic. Attack with magic as soon as possible to not lose any ticks. If timed correctly, your first magic attack should be 1 tile before the safe spot tile. The head should now be facing the middle. The second magic attack should be on the safe spot tile. Immediately after this, run towards the head to null the potential flame wall. This is where your third and final magic attack will be. Switch back into your melee gear and Scythe the hand. This is now the first hit of Mage 7-3. Turn the head for the second Scythe hit and repeat the cycle. This is what it should look like at full speed. This is the Mage Start for 1 spec. After you spec, attack the hand with the Scythe twice. This is to get on the same tick cycle as 4-1. Switch to the lance for 1 hit and run the head to start 4-1. Do the first hit of 4-1 with the lance and then switch to the Scythe. Just like the last method, the first Scythe hit here is the second Scythe hit in Mage 7-3. For flame walls, the first hit tanked should be nulled here on the west side. For the east side, you can null the flame wall here or dodge it. The second tanked hit is dodged here after your fourth scythe hit. This will always be dodged whether it's scuffed or not. The third tanked hit should always be nulled at the head. For acid walking, you run far away from the hand to drag yourself over the acid. There are 3 attacks that you tank, so there are 3 different acid walks for each side. This is east side hit 1. This is east side hit 2. This is east side hit 3. This is west side hit 1. This is west side hit 2. This is west side hit 3. On phase 3, you can do an 8-tick cycle with the eye and scythe. This is pretty high APM, and you should only do this if you're skilled enough. Just make sure not to run to the left too early, otherwise the head can attack you. This can also be done with any 5-tick weapon. If you plan on doing this with the Halley, make sure to accommodate the extra attack range. Shadow Mage Running is currently the best mage method for solo raids. Before learning this, it's implied that you've already learned basic 4-tick Mage Running. Because of the Mage Hand southwest tile, Shadow Running is different for both the east and west side. This method uses dragging, and it's strongly recommended to use the Mage Thrall. The tile markers shown here are training wheel tile markers. There's more simplified shadow tile markers that'll be explained later. This is the shadow method for the west side. This is also commonly referred to as 12-0 shadow running. The most important attacks happen on these highlighted tiles. These are the tiles that drag you while shadow running. For the first hit, attack the mage hand with the same timing as basic mage running. This means your attack happens at the exact same time that it turns. For your 8th hit, switch to long range for a single attack. This prevents you from being dragged. Immediately run to tile 9 and switch back to accurate. After your 12th attack, click back to tile 1 and continue Shadowrunning. This is the shadow method for the east side. This is also known as 8-to-1 shadow running. The most important attacks happen on these highlighted tiles. The first attack of this method is 1 tick after the Olm's head turn. Stand on the right to force the head to turn and attack accordingly. Switch to long range for your third attack, then switch back to accurate. After your 6th attack, you'll be tanking a hit. When you do, you should be on the tile right before the 4-7 tile. This is to null any potential flame walls. If timed correctly, you don't need to manually null the flame wall. With how the pathing works, it should always happen naturally. The only tiles that are really important are the ones where you get dragged. This means you have a lot of leniency with your attacks and movement. Just make sure you're always able to reach the drag tiles in time to attack. These are the simplified shadow tiles. There's not much to explain since the method for shadow running stays the same. Technically, there is a wrong way to shadow run because of the Olm's attack cycle. For the west side, if you start on either the empty or special, the head will continue to turn normally. However, if you start it on a basic, the head will turn center and attack you on your 10th attack. For example, this was basic 1 followed by the empty event. I start the cycle on basic 2. Even without any splashes, the head still turns center. If this happens, you can null the flame wall 1 tile over during your 10th attack and continue shadow running. This can also happen on the east side. In this example, this is basic 2 followed by the special. Then I turn the head to skip basic 1 and start shadow running. After the 4th attack, you'll notice the head turns center when it normally shouldn't. When this happens, run to the tile before 3 LR to null any potential flame walls. You can continue shadow running, but now you're taking 2 hits instead of 1 while also risking specials. This is no good. These issues can almost always be avoided by just using the Mage Thrall. I recommend summoning it near the mage hand. I personally never pay attention to the attack cycle while shadow running. Even if you do have to deal with this issue, most of the time the hand is almost already dead. The only real issue is the east side because now you're risking specials. In this example, I'm using the Mage Thrall. Even so, the attack cycle still overlaps incorrectly with the east side shadow running if you set it up wrong. The hit that you normally tank after the 6th hit is now a basic and a special. This is obviously really bad because now you're risking portal swap. So main things to take away from this. Always use the Mage Thrall near the mage hand. Always be ready to null the flame wall if you have to. The first hit of the west side should be on the empty or special. The first hit of the east side should be 1 tick after you skip the empty or special. If you learn the spec starts for each side, you never have to worry about this issue. With these methods, you are perfectly put into shadow running where the attack cycle never overlaps. This is the start for west side, phase 1 and 2 specs. Keep the head centered before you start shadow running. Attack the mage hand twice and start shadow running at tile 4. This is west side, phase 1 and 1 spec. Attack the mage hand twice after your spec and start with tile 6. This is west side phase 2 or phase 3 with 2 specs. Attack the mage hand twice and keep the head centered. Then start shadow running with tile 4. This is west side phase 2 or phase 3 with 1 spec. Attack the mage hand twice after your spec and start with tile 6. This is the start for east side, phase 1 and 2 specs. This is east side, phase 1 with 1 spec. This is east side, phase 2 or phase 3 with 2 specs. This is east side, phase 2 or phase 3 with 1 spec. The best method for phase 3 is Shadow Scythe 4-0. This is a 0 tick loss method and there's no difference between the east and west side. The first hit of the cycle is 1 tick after the head turns. The easiest way to start is by shadow running normally and starting 4-0 whenever you're on tick. After your first magic attack, you need to be along any of these highlighted tiles. Oddly enough, an issue with this method is using the Mage Thrall. Sometimes the Thrall control and turn the head to the right because it attacked the melee hand. This doesn't mess up the cycle, but you'll be forced to tank a hit. There's more details behind this, but essentially it's like a 1 in 8 chance of happening every 4-0 cycle. You do have time to flick your prayers on, but this can be really difficult. You could also keep your overheads on, but that's a huge waste of prayer on a small chance for it to even happen. You can also just not use the Mage Thrall, or just tank the hit and continue the method anyway. As far as I know, there's no other way to deal with this. Before sending it into head phase, you have the choice of killing either the mage hand or the melee hand first. This choice matters for a few different reasons. If you kill the mage hand first, the melee hand still has control over specials. This means you could be risking the hand healing while the mage hand starts regenerating. You only want to do this if you're absolutely sure it won't heal, or you'll kill it fast enough for it to not matter. If you kill the melee hand first, you never have to deal with this issue. Because of travel delay, if you attack the head too early after killing the mage hand, it has a chance to heal. To avoid this, you can kill the melee hand last and instantly attack the head. This is technically the best method for entering head phase, but it's a little risky. If you kill the mage hand last, running to the back of the room to delay your attack can still result in the head healing. If you reach the far back row, it'll delay yourself an extra tick. This prevents you from accidentally healing it. This only happens because the head heals thinking that it's still phase 3. If you don't care about speed, killing the melee hand first is the safest option. You can practice any method you want for the head phase on phase 1 to 3. This helps with practicing the movement without having to worry about the fallen crystal chunks. This is the basic 2-tick blowpipe method. Your first attack should always be 1 tick after the head turns or attacks. This prevents you from being flame walled. You can start at any point, but for learners it might be easier to start from either safe spot. It's important to make more use of the room while doing this. Staying next to the head is bad because you're more vulnerable to fallen crystal chunks. This is because of the crystals that fall 1 tile away from the head. If you're on the first row, there's no way to dodge them without ruining your movement. You should mainly stay on the 3rd row and use diagonals. Here's an example of doing this wrong. If you're attacking on the same tick as the Olm's attack, you can get flame walled. To fix this, just delay yourself by 1 tick. This method is blowpiping into a 5-tick weapon. This is pretty bad damage, and you should only do this if you're low on supplies. Attack with the blowpipe and then your 5-tick weapon before running back to the other side. Run the head at the same time it turns towards you, just like the previous method. There are different variations of this, but the method stays the same. This is blowpipe 7 to 0. This is a niche method and only useful if you're low on supplies. Basic 2-tick blowpiping is better DPS than this. This is the same on the opposite side, but mirrored. This is blowpipe 10 to 1. This is an advanced method and very difficult to do. Again, the method is the same for the opposite side, but mirrored. There's 3 different methods if you're using the Atlatl. The first method is 4 to 0. Use the accurate attack style and attack the head at the same time the head turns. The second method is 6 to 1. This is 10% less DPS than the next method, 8 to 2. This is still a good method, but you probably only want to do it if you're low on supplies. For the west side, start specifically on this tile. Run at the same time the head turns and attack the head. After the final hit, delay yourself by 2 ticks before resetting the cycle. For the east side, start on this tile. The third method is 8 to 2. In theory, this is the best Atlatl method, but you tank an extra hit. This is range 4 to 1 and is done with a 5-tick weapon. You'll be attacking at the safe spot on one side, then running at the same time it faces you. Your second attack should happen at the same time it turns. When you make it to the safe spot, run at the same time it faces you, then attack. This is when you tank one hit. If you're doing this right, this should null any flame walls. For your fourth attack, make sure not to turn the head too early. The head needs to face the middle and should never go directly from left to right. This method can be done reversed on either the left or right side, it doesn't really matter. You can also improv acid walk while doing this. This isn't really necessary, but something to do if you're skilled enough. This is the 0 damage Dragon Hunter crossbow method. It's a niche method and you should only do this if you're low on supplies. Because of the head's southwest tile, the initial drag can only be done from north to south. This is Bofa 6 to 2. If you're doing this right, you'll always take the hit at the center of the head. This means you'll always null the flame wall. This is 5 to 1 for the Bofa. This is better than 6 to 2 because you take less damage. This works on either side, but you can only be dragged from the north to the south. When the head is nearly finished, prioritize getting close to it. This lowers the travel distance, which kills it sooner. This is only really important for speed, but it's a great habit to get into. Thank you all for watching the Remastered Solo Raids guide. This was a huge project that I've been working on for so many years. The entire video was a colossal amount of work. I've easily put in well over 1,000 hours into this, and I think it was worth it. To be able to teach you all solo raids, it's been an absolute pleasure. If you guys did enjoy the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you all again for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care, everyone.